This is Rogers TV.
That company will have to spend $1 billion to expand internet access and establish a Western Canada headquarters in Calgary.
The creation of 3,000 new jobs in Western Canada, which must be maintained for a minimum of 10 years.
The contracts come with steep penalties for Videotron. If they don't abide by these conditions, they could face a $200 million fine. For Rogers, that fine is $1 billion. The minister also says that if he doesn't see prices come down, he may be forced to enact new legislation to try and force companies to bring down prices. This deal was first announced 2 years ago, and since then it's received approval from the CRTC, the Competition Bureau, and the Federal Court of Appeal. Rogers is the parent company of this radio station. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
Active weather this afternoon moving into Ottawa and Smiths Falls. We've got periods of snow, some mixing also possible. Temperatures just struggling today, guaranteed high of only 2, but temperatures are climbing overnight. We're going to change over to rain into Saturday morning, and then we climb to near 12, but we fall to minus 10. So we'll see that change over back to some flurries. The guaranteed high today, 2 degrees.
City News time is 10:01. Ahead of a possible strike, the federal government and the Public Service Alliance of Canada are expected to begin mediated negotiations on Sunday. The union, which represents over 165,000 federal public servants, announced strike votes for workers in the core public service in January amid a protracted labor dispute. If workers opt for a strike, the union would be able to begin one within 60 days, as long as it gives the government 3 days notice. Negotiations over a new contract first began in June of 2021, but talks broke down and the union declared an impasse in May of 2022, with both parties filing labor complaints since. The government says it is committed to reaching an agreement that will be fair to both parties, and final votes are to be cast by April 11th. And Russian and Belarusian players will be able to compete at Wimbledon as neutral athletes after the All England club reversed its ban from last year. The players must comply with appropriate conditions. Now, that includes not expressing support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Other tennis tournaments have allowed Russian and Belarusian players to compete as neutrals. The All England club says it considers alignment between the Grand Slams to be increasingly important in the current tennis environment. This year's Wimby will start on July 3rd. The women's final is scheduled for July 15th and the men's final on July 16th. I am Damilola Unime. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, there's no two ways about it. We have a very busy show for you today. A little bit later, Vern White is going to join us to talk about the Mass Casualties Commission report. And I know you know the name Vern White. He was our police chief here for many years. He worked for the RCMP. And of course, he was a senator in this country. I want to talk to him about it. His perspective is going to be very interesting. And I also wanted the perspective of my friend and colleague, Dan Alstred. He joins me now, news director for City News in Halifax, 95.7. How are you, Dan?
Good, Sam. How are you?
Good. We know that after 76 days of hearings, what the province of Nova Scotia and the community of Portapique has gone through, incredibly tragic, the loss of life there. When the report came down, Dan, yesterday, what was it like to receive and see some of those recommendations?
Well, it was a heavy day. That's for sure. I think it's kind of lost in all of this. We're talking 3,000 pages and 130 recommendations. But what gets lost in this is that Nova Scotians haven't really had any real closure on this yet, or we really haven't even processed the whole thing yet. And listening to the commissioners yesterday, I was on the air that day, and it brought back a whole lot of pretty painful memories, at least for me, and I'm assuming that for the families involved and everybody that was involved in that. Nova Scotians, are a tough sort, but to listen to all that stuff over again certainly dredged up a lot of painful memories.
Absolutely, Dan and I. I know how difficult it can be in a newsroom. We've got to do that job. It doesn't mean it doesn't hit us emotionally as well.
Yeah, for sure. But it was surprising, at least from my opinion. There was a lot of rumor and speculation about what this report was going to say and such in the lead up to it. A lot of people, including myself, were surprised at how scathing it really was. The commissioners really took the RCMP apart on this, and I think because it was so scathing, I think that a lot of the people that are directly impacted by this were happy to hear what the commissioners had to say, and we're pleased to see that there is 130 recommendations and an implementation committee that's going to review this. I know, Sam, you've been at this for a while, and we've seen reports on all kinds of different things in the past, and everybody, the day of becomes, that everybody says that, yes, we're going to follow these recommendations, and then the report gets bundled up into a box and it sits on a shelf for 25 years. But with some of the recommendations and the timelines laid out in this report, this implementation committee, which is, by the way, going to have 2 family members that sit on that implementation committee. So the chances of many of these recommendations actually getting acted upon is that much better.
Well, brave family members, Dan, to put themselves in that situation, and it's probably the love of their loved ones that are gone that is driving them to do that kind of work, because I can't imagine that would be easy work. When we look at the recommendations, we know there's 130, as you mentioned. We know 75 are directed right at the RCMP. And I've said here before, I have a lot of friends that are RCMP, a lot of friends that are police officers here in Ottawa. I have utmost respect for what they do. But I think if you were ever to say anybody prior to this devastating time for Nova Scotia, that the RCMP would not be able to communicate with each other, that the communication with families as this unfolded, the communications with the public. And Dan, I was on air that day in Halifax because you were taking me simulcasting. You've got a small team there. We were simulcasting from Ottawa here for a couple of hours, and I decided just to read what the RCMP was putting out on Twitter, because that's all we were seeing. We were seeing lots of people chatting, but we only wanted a reliable, credible source. And the irony is, I only took RCMP that day. I did not want to have any other sources that day. So the breakdown, I think if you would have said to the average Canadian, do you think the RCMP would be able to manage something like this? I think the average Canadian would have felt very confident that they did. But a lot of this came down to very, very devastating communication breakdown that cost people lives. It cost them their lives. There's no two ways about that, Dan.
Yeah, the method of communication the day of, let's not forget this was a 2-day event. It was in the evening of the 18th and during the day on the 19th. The communication was Twitter, and a lot of people that live in the rural areas weren't checking their phones. Many of them maybe didn't have Twitter. Mm-hmm. The RCMP commissioner yesterday, or the interim commissioner yesterday, said that that they've recognized that one of the big recommendations was a national public alert strategy, and the RCMP commissioner yesterday, after admitting that he hadn't read the report prior to appearing before which to me, Sam, I've been at this a long time, as you know, was a jaw dropper.
Me too.
I couldn't believe that he admitted that he hadn't even looked at the executive summary of this document. But anyway, said that they have they've improved the way that they alert the public alert system, that annoying sound, or not annoying, I shouldn't say annoying, but that really loud sounder that you get.
Yeah, to get our attention, for sure.
Yeah, so that would have woke people up, and the commissioner was pushed yesterday by a number of different reporters saying, if that would have been in effect, do you think it would have saved lives? And the general consensus is that it would have, but the RCMP commissioner wouldn't admit that yesterday. So I think the calls for a complete overhaul of the RCMP and its culture and the way that it trains its officers, I think is where everybody's kind of landing on this. That the national police force needs to be, essentially gutted and start over, because this isn't the first time that they've been called out for stuff and they've just never acted on it in the past.
But if not on a night like April the 18th, when would that emergency system be warranted? If it wasn't warranted on a night like April the 18th, why was that system even developed? Because that was the prime example in my mind of when you would use that system. And once again, I'm not a police officer, Dan. I have a lot of respect for what they do, but my understanding is, as we talk about, because we get them here, we when we get them on our phones and I'm on live, I read it out for people on the radio, right? So it's meant to be a communication tool. Do you think they'll ever heal in Portapique in Nova Scotia?
Oh, that's a tough question, and I think many of the people there will say no. It really rocked the entire community. We did hear from a few family members yesterday who, for the most part, were happy with what they heard from the report. Many of them calling it a blueprint for things to move forward. Speaking with Scott McLeod yesterday, whose brother Sean was one of the shooting victims, he said that nothing that we say or do today with regards to this is going to bring his brother back. But what he was happy to see was that there's a blueprint now to move forward, and there's some commitment from the federal government, from the provincial government here, to move this forward. And he was. Obviously, he's still coming to terms with the loss of his brother, but he said that this was a positive step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at the recommendations and as you mentioned, the implementation team there, I think Canadians won't have a lot of patience, Dan, for to hear about this in 2 years from now. I think they're looking for quick action. Obviously they're deciding on who the new commissioner of the RCMP is going to be. They're walking into a big job. I mean, I don't know who wants that job. But that's a very, very big job to try and take on all these recommendations and implement them. But I don't think Canadians have the patience for, we'll do this in 2025.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the first in a series of timeline events that were laid out yesterday is 30 days from now. So, and that's to set up a trauma line for people to, that are going through stuff like this. And there's benchmarks all the way through this report. There's benchmarks, and I think it's going to be the job of the implementation committee that has yet to be struck, but to hold everybody's feet to the fire, so to speak, and act on these, because you're right. I don't think, and I know that Nova Scotians will not take, we're putting this down, or it's, we're looking at budgets, or it's going to cost too much money. They just won't accept that. I think that we've got the as the family member said yesterday, we have a blueprint, and now it's time to follow the blueprint.
Mm-hmm. We know April 18th and April 19th is approaching very quickly. Dan, what does that time look like when you're in Nova Scotia, you're in Halifax, we're coming up on the third anniversary? What will that feel like now that we've had this commission report?
Well, I think the process of starting to deal with it. I mean, I can't speak for the families, and I can't speak for those that were directly impacted by it. I was not, but I know for me now that we've got this blueprint, this document, this 7-volume report. I think that I don't think we're ever really going to get over it here, to be honest with you. I think that if we ever try to just come to terms with it, I don't think it's going to happen in 3 years. I don't think it's going to happen in 5 years. Mm-hmm. I think that this has really, really marked the province, and I think that mark is going to be here probably forever.
Sadly, I agree with you, Dan. And even living in Ontario, I love the province of Nova Scotia, as you know, and I just feel for all people living in Nova Scotia, and especially the families and those directly affected. I know how busy a day like today is, and the fact you'd join us here in Ottawa, I'm grateful, Dan.
Oh, my pleasure, Sam.
Thank you so much, Dan Elstrad, joining us, News Director for City News in Halifax, News 95.7 there. I appreciate Dan's time today. We're going to talk a little LRT. with Laura Shantz. She is the board member for Ottawa Transit Riders. There's been some delays. I want to get a chance to get the scoop from Laura. We're also going to speak with Barbara Cartwright today, CEO of Humane Canada. Lots of different topics to talk to Barbara about. We're going to be talking about that horse roundup, those horses. We spoke with Jan Arden, of course, musician and actor, a couple of weeks ago about this particular topic. And, you know, she's really fighting to have those Canadian horses not brought to Japan in such a horrific way. So we're going to ask Barbara about that. We're also going to talk about banning animal testing for cosmetics as well with Barbara Cartwright. Vern White's going to be here today. Bruce Heyman, the former ambassador from the United States into Canada, is going to be here as well. Lots of great guests, and we hope you stay on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hi, I'm Justice.
And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions.
That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support.
Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
It was John's graduation. We were so proud. We all got together for a picnic. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and we listened. It helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of John, because now he has a real future to look forward to.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose to be fulfilled in our territory. As we embrace our traditional teachings, we can lead the next generation into the fullness of what our Creator designed. Our shared history reveals a broken relationship. But as all Canadians commit to hear truth, acknowledge injustice, we can learn to walk in our traditional way, Letsamot, with a good heart and a good mind. Then all of our lives will be enriched. Kwasai.
Here comes the 67. They score! How's that for your first of the season?
Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play! Steps one off, scores!
He is making a statement, isn't he?
Oh, that's a beauty of a shot from the freshman.
The OHL playoffs.
What a goal!
On Rogers TV.
Ladies, leave your man at home tonight.
Hi, this is Dominique Orley. I'm a part of Encore 3, and be sure to catch my set this week.
We are going downtown, leaving out all your stress and your sorrow.
Hi, I'm Justice.
And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions.
That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support.
Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for spending time with us here on City News. It's been a very busy week in the news. Lots to talk about. We've talked a little bit about the LRT and the delay of Stage 2. We wanted to spend some time today with Laura Shantz, board member for Ottawa Transit Riders. Hi, Laura.
Good morning.
Laura, I feel like we could take our interview from 5 months ago and a year ago and just play it again, because it in many ways it's the same stuff, Laura, that there's delays and challenges with the LRT.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are hearing this and kind of, doing, like you said, a bit of a Groundhog Day, that we've heard this before. And I think people are a little cautious in accepting the new ready by date that's been presented to us.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, I've got really mixed feelings on this, Laura, because now that we know through the inquiry, the LRT inquiry, that it was rushed at the end and that, they probably should have taken a bit more time. The fact that this time they're asking for a bit more time to get it right and to do that that testing and obviously have a safe system, I do have a bit more patience for that. I'd love your thoughts, though.
Yeah, I'm of the mind that I do want them to take the time and get it right. And I think what could really make the difference is about how that's communicated to us. What kind of communications will we receive as this training progresses? Will there be the full transparency that I think riders want? Will we know if the testing is going well? Will we know if it's not, very importantly? Mm-hmm. And those are the kind of questions I think that can really make or break public confidence at this stage. And like I said to Steve Derlush yesterday, of course, he's the councillor for Riverside South and Finley Creek, and obviously leading that subcommittee on the LRT. One of the comments that I made to him is that, this has been the perfect storm for things to go wrong. You layer on the pandemic, you layer on the shortage of labor, and as well as the shortage of goods. It has been the perfect storm. So I think we were all expecting a delay. Yeah, I don't think that it's a huge surprise to people. And I think, like I said, I think it boils down again to really, helping to manage those expectations because, as I understand now, too, that this new due date we've been given is all assuming that, the train is actually ready to commence testing on the day that they've, kind of predicted, which is still months away. And we don't know 100% if we're going to meet that or not. I do like that they're, starting to tell us a little more and, kind of anticipating this. And I think, I really want to see that transparency continue. That's something that would be really important for all of us in the city. The group I've got to tell you that I've really felt for is Carleton University students. Yeah. I mean, that's back to school. Exactly. That back to school in September is going to be rough. We know that, Carleton students often have some big challenges with the bus. I hear a lot about bus 7 still getting stuck on some of those roads when you get people who don't know where they're going and they're trying to drop people off and they're parking or stopping in the wrong zones. That can really back up the bus traffic and create some real headaches for students that they, ideally wouldn't have to deal with, especially for those who are new to our city and don't know their way around and don't know how to get on or off campus without those Carleton-specific bus stops. Mm-hmm. I'm normally a very positive person, I swear, Laura. I know we talk and sometimes I'm a bit negative, but do you think there's going to be a day, maybe if this mic is still turned on for me, that maybe you and I in 5 years or 10 years from now, we'll have a conversation where we'll look back and go, yeah, it was a little rough, but boy, it was worth it. Do you think that conversation will come in regards to the LRT? I really hope so. We need a better way to get people around in a lot of parts of our city. I've had to, for years, I used to live not far from Bayview Station, and heading north-south back when previous maintenance was done along those replacement buses that run north-south was kind of miserable. And I remember how, happy I was when that train was up and running again after all those times. That I think over time, I hope things get a lot better. But the thing is, I don't think people will forget. I think it's really important that, people are willing to give transit a second chance, but I also think it's important for accountability that we not forget all this stuff that's gone on, because if we remember this is how we can learn lessons to do better. Oh, 100%. 100%. I just want to change gears a little bit. I had the pleasure of hosting the Talkback Hour this morning because my colleague David Smith is a little bit under the weather. And we got a call from a first-time caller by the name of Dan, and he was calling because he rides the bus. I think it was the 88. No, is that right? The 88? Yeah. He rides the 88, and he was saying he's 66 years old, and he says, this was his words, not as strong as I used to be, and getting on the bus and having those seats filled, those priority seats at the front of the bus being filled
can be, challenging for maybe elderly people or people with disabilities getting on the bus. Do you see that, Laura? Do you see that people are not kind of moving and sort of seeing everyone around them and making the bus experience good for everybody? Or do you see people, just kind of sitting in their seat and not caring what other people do?
It really depends. I'm someone, when I take the bus now, I'm normally going by myself or with, my kids who are pretty able-bodied. My 6-year-old, I'd still like for him to be able to sit down because he's a little small to stand up. And it just really depends. There are times of day when you can easily get a priority seat or any seat on the bus. But when those buses fill up, there are, challenges getting seats sometimes. And I can even think back to when I pushed a stroller and had a lot smaller kids and was taking transit every day. And there were, at that point, I don't know if you'd probably remember too, we had a lot of conflict between people using wheelchairs and people pushing strollers, and how do we prioritize and make space? I think, there's a real concern to make sure there is enough accessible seating and to make sure people understand that. I think when we didn't have crowding on buses for a couple of years now on some routes, some people have forgotten that little bit of courtesy of moving back if you're able to, and making sure those seats are available for others.
Mm-hmm. And we know that obviously we've seen a rise in the number of situations that have been violent on OC Transit, and we see horrific outcomes in Toronto in terms of people losing their life and being assaulted. Do you worry about the transit system, Laura, from a violence perspective?
I think that it's really challenging because I know that the concerns are out there, and I don't want to minimize them at all, because people who don't feel safe on transit, those are important voices to listen to and to understand the why. And a lot of times for me, the answer to that question boils down to, do we feel that other riders, are going to be there to us to stand up and say, hey, what's going on? Can I help you? Or to distract or diffuse the situation. We know there's some great bystander intervention techniques because operators can't see everything, especially if you're in a place like the train where the operator's way up front in their own special spot and you're, by yourself. And so I think there's a real role for bystanders in really keeping one another safe or standing up for one another. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean you have to take on someone being violent, but just, if we can work on developing that kind of culture where we look out for one another, I think that would slowly start to address some of those concerns. It's not a magical fix, but, it is something we need to think about, how we as people who use transit can make sure that we're making a spot that feels good for everybody. I can speak really quickly about being 20 years ago when I first moved to Ottawa, and, some really unpleasant things happened to me on the bus. I was groped multiple times. I was harassed. Being a young woman in public, that kind of thing wasn't uncommon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And, I've been there. I get it. And I would absolutely love that no one else would have to experience that. And I hope that, riders will stand up for riders and make sure if we see something that doesn't feel right, we flag it, signal it, distract if we can, or, contribute in a way to make sure it's a good experience for everyone.
Laura Shantz, you're always so generous to come on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Shantz talking about Ottawa Transit today with us. She's a board member with Ottawa Transit Riders. We appreciate her time today. We've got great guests coming up for you. The former U.S. Ambassador Bruce Heyman's going to join us today. We're going to talk to him about Donald Trump and that indictment. We're also going to speak with Vern White, of course, former Ottawa Police Chief and former Senator, about the Mass Casualties Commission report out of the tragic days in 2020 in Nova Scotia. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, tacos aren't only for Tuesday. I make a Mexican taco feast for a crowd.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
At Celebrate Ottawa, we love showing you something a little different. We showcase remarkable people highlighting the city's diversity in arts, culture, sports, and nature. We will show you features that prove Ottawa is a vibrant and exciting city. We'll entertain you and we'll even teach you new things. Join me, your host, Lila Ryan, as we explore and celebrate Ottawa.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 31st. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, -1. In Smiths Falls, it is 1 degree. And here's what's making news this hour. It has been more than 2 years in the making, but the Rogers Shaw deal has been given the green light. Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne has signed off on the $26 billion Rogers takeover of Shaw. This allows the transfer of Shaw-owned Freedom Mobile's wireless license to Quebecer and secures legally binding commitments from Rogers and Videotron, which is purchasing Freedom Mobile from Shaw. The Federal Court of Appeal back in January rejected the Competition Bureau's bid to stop the agreement as it upheld the ruling from the Competition Tribunal in favor of the pact. Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos says the scale of the new federal dental care plan will be bigger than just about any other permanent government benefit program to date. It is expected to be twice as large as old age security. The cost of the program is now estimated at $4.4 billion per year, up from the original forecast of $1.7 billion. New estimates suggest dentists could end up seeing as many as 9 million more patients who didn't have coverage before. City News time is 10:32. I am Damilola Unime for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
And we're back on City News. I'm Sam Laprade. We appreciate you spending this Friday with us. A very busy week in news. And one thing I love to do here on this show is maybe find those stories that not a lot of people are talking about. And one of them may be something that hasn't hit your radar this week. We wanted to speak with Barbara Cartwright, CEO of Humane Canada. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Barbara. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Barbara, when you think about this past week, it's been a very busy week with that federal budget coming down. Let's talk a little bit about what that meant for animal testing on cosmetics. This was not on my radar at all. I know it was on yours, but did this federal decision come as a surprise to you?
Yes and no. So we've been working and lobbying the government for about a decade now on banning the testing of cosmetics on animals in Canada. And there was a bill back in 2015 brought forward by the Senate. It didn't pass in 2019. It made it as far as the House of Commons. But it did spark a national conversation. And so the Liberals actually put directly into their election platform that they would bring something in to ban not only cosmetic testing on animals, but also testing of toxic substances on animals. And so we saw the toxic testing piece move forward, but we've been waiting to see how they were going to address the ban on cosmetic testing on animals. and was very pleased to see it in the budget, which this is the first time we've worked on a budget bill with such a significant animal protection provision in it.
And I think people need to understand, I mean, this is for beauty products.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, I open up my makeup drawer, and you'd think I was a lot cuter, Barbara, with the amount of makeup that I have.
You're very cute.
But I open up that makeup drawer, and I think to myself, are these companies testing on animals? I actually thought about it getting ready for our time together today, because I think to myself, I don't want to support companies that are doing this.
Absolutely, and you shouldn't. And there's lots of resources out there if you Google, companies that don't test on animals. Mm-hmm. And we're grateful for large organizations like Lush and Body Shop that have been at the forefront of that. L'Oreal has been at the forefront of pushing forward not only not testing on animals, but what are the alternatives to testing on animals, because of course we still want to make sure that the products that we're using are safe for us to use, but we don't need to do it at the risk of an intense harm being brought to animals. And so alongside these kinds of bans comes a full drive to find different alternatives that can be used in order to test. So different computer models, digital skin, for example, digital corneas. So there's lots of really interesting things coming out that makes cosmetic testing completely unnecessary. In fact, there's already about 20,000 raw ingredients that over decades have already been tested on animals, and yet companies continue to still test, even though we know they're safe. So all that will go away with these new provisions brought forward by the government.
And it's so interesting. I mean, because as I sort of dove into this a bit preparing for today, you know, it's not only are they suffering in many cases, but there can be death at the end of that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, all, for cosmetics and makeup and beauty, luxury, basically, something that we just simply don't need to continue doing. And many jurisdictions have already moved away from it. So in that way, Canada is lagging. But we are really pleased to see that this government, that the Liberals are committed to ending the practice.
Mm-hmm. And we want to get the Liberals' attention on another big topic. And you know how excited I was a couple of weeks ago to have Jan Arden join me, musician, actor. I call her a comedian because she's so funny. But she's very passionate about something that's happening in this country, and that is, taking horses that have sometimes come through the United States or Canadian horses, putting them in crates, shipping them over to Japan to only meet their tragic, and I won't describe it because it's disgusting, on how those animals are killed. And she's wanting this to end. And I know you've also been very passionate about this particular practice. We know that this has been on the minds of the Liberal government, because they're getting pushed to stop this practice as well. Where does Humane Canada stand on this particular issue?
Well, just as you described, we are opposed to this practice. We see that it highlights a very disturbing issue in Canada, which is the difference between how we treat companion horses and how we treat horses being raised for slaughter. Very, very drastically different. There significant suffering experienced by these horses, as we can all imagine. Horses are prey animals. Horses are highly sensitive, and they're being put on planes and shipped, in some cases, for more than 28 hours. It violates Canadian law, without food, without water, which we know at about more than 20 hours for horses, they start to experience colic, pain, distress. They've never been flown before, so that alone causes significant pain and stress, causes injury, and then they land somewhere only to be killed. And so it's completely unnecessary and causes significant stress and pain and suffering. And it's not something Canadians support. The government did also put this in their election platform promise, and it is in Minister Bibeau's letter, her what I call the PMP, the performance management letter that ministers receive from the Prime Minister. So what we're concerned about is why we're seeing the heel dragging. There's political will, there's public will, it's clearly an animal welfare science issue, and so it should just be banned.
This is one I don't understand. I think this would be the most cut and dry thing to do, because in speaking to Jan, I mean, she was saying, obviously she lives in Alberta, is very proud to be an Albertan and very proud of the horse culture there. And she sort of made the note, no cowboy says they're going to eat their horse. Right. And I know that sounds really, really gross, but I mean, the bottom line is that's not how horses are treated in Alberta. Right. And so that's been a very big challenge. I don't understand why this isn't getting more attention in the media as well. Like, to be honest, Jan said she was so thrilled to hear from somebody from Ottawa that wanted to talk to her about this subject, because she's not getting, a lot of attention. And we know that MPs listen to this show, Barbara. We know their aides do. We know that they want to know what's going on in this, locally and in the country. And they listen to shows like mine and Rob Snow, and they hear this kind of thing. What would you want someone listening right now to do to stop the slaughter of these horses?
Ban the practice. It's a simple ban, and it's a simple thing to do. And so if you're an MP or you're a staffer who's listening right now, reach out to Minister Bibeau's office and ask, why isn't this moving forward? Mm-hmm. What is the holdup? And get that holdup addressed immediately. And it is a great thing that all Canadians support. It's senseless. It's a tiny, tiny industry. It's not large. And it is easily ended, which will increase animal welfare in Canada significantly and follow along with other sister jurisdictions that ban this horrible practice of shipping horses out live to be slaughtered. It's such a crazy thing. I hear what you're saying and how Jan has really helped you, come to that same passion of why would we do this? Why would we send an animal more than, in some cases, 28 hours of shipping just to then be killed? Mm-hmm. It's not the right end for horses, for Canadian horses at all.
And I want you to know, Barbara, that we've reached out, my producers have reached out to Minister Bibeau to ask her to come on here, because I certainly have some questions for her. I want to understand where she stands on the issue. I want to understand why the heels are dragging. And I think any company that is going to put horses in wooden crates, sit them on a tarmac, whether it's minus 30 or plus 30, and not feed them and not water them, and do it at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, that's not a company that's proud of what they're doing. They cannot be, Barbara. They cannot be proud. And they cannot get up in the morning and go, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to change the world. They're going to get up in the morning and say, I once again today am sending hundreds of horses to Japan to be slaughtered.
Absolutely, and it highlights that real blatant difference of how we're treating other horses. So other horses that are being flown, for example, say racehorses or any other reason a horse might be flown, they actually have attendants who accompany them on flights. They have access to water, they have access to food, they have access to rest throughout their journey, and yet these poor horses that are being shipped for slaughter have no attendants, have no access to food and water, can't lay down in their crates, and so they're being shipped for long periods of time, having to stand. And if something does go wrong, nobody knows that something is going wrong for those poor horses in flight because nobody's back there watching over them. So how can we treat one horse one way and another horse in such a very different way? And that continues, and I think we have to think, change or not change our minds, but turn our minds to the fact that this happens because some horses are thought of as being companions, and other horses, the ones that are being thought of as food, are just throwaway and are not treated with the same respect and kindness and simple welfare practices that every animal in Canada, even under the current legislative framework, has a right to.
Barbara, thank you so much. I know we call you usually with a bit of 5-minute warning and ask you to come on. You're very generous with your time. Thank you so much. Barbara Cartwright, CEO of Humane Canada, joining us today to talk about some of those issues facing animals in this country. Thank you, Barbara. We are seeing some horrific news out of Akwesasne today. We know that 6 bodies have been found. A lot of details still coming from this grisly discovery. We know that there's some breaking news that one of the children may have had a Canadian passport. The Prime Minister has been asked about this. Our City News team is working hard to bring you the latest updates here. We will definitely be following this story very, very closely here on City News. If you haven't heard, 6 bodies discovered in Akwesasne. We know that that's right on the border of the United States. We know, and I don't know if it's linked, it's interesting timing, that Roxham Road, a week ago, Roxham Road was closed. Are they connected? I don't know that yet. But we'll certainly be following this story very closely here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
My husband is a wonderful man and a great father when he's not drinking. I'm so angry he chooses alcohol over us. If he really loved us, he'd stop drinking, right? My counselor suggested I try Al-Anon. I didn't understand why. I'm not the one with the problem, but I'm glad I went. Do you worry about someone's drinking? You are not alone. Al-Anon or Alateen can help. Call 866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll introduce you to the chef of the East India Company. They're actually going to be sharing one of their famous recipes for one of their sauces, so you're going to want to tune in for that and be sure to take some notes. Also on the show, we'll share a fabulous artist. Oh my goodness, he's a stone carver, and he works with stones that are about 3 feet high and 60 pounds. All that and more on Friday's Daytime Ottawa, right here on Rogers TV.
Hey everybody, my name is Karen. I'm here with my best friends Shane and Monique. Join us on Rogers TV for Fitness Faction. Every week we're going to take you through a full body workout. We've got strength training, we've got cardio, we've got HIIT. Ladies, let's get back into it.
I think we've got 10 more skaters. Let's go.
Comes the 67. They score! How's that for your first of the season?
Another highlight reel goal. Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play! Steps one scores!
He is making a statement, isn't he?
Oh, that's a beauty of a shot from the freshman.
The OHL playoffs.
What a goal!
On Rogers TV.
That's the way I kill my skill sharpen, cause I've been here sharpening.
What's going on, y'all? It's Jay Morris, aka your favorite light skin, and you're gonna check out my performance on Encore Ottawa 3 coming up this week. Let's go.
All again, murderation, 911, call it in. Neon murder
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm Sam Laprade, back with you on City News. Lots of developing stories today. We are watching very closely what's happened in Akwesasne. We know that 6 bodies have been discovered in the St. Lawrence River. Very, very tragic. We're going to be following that story. As I mentioned, if we have anything else to bring to you, you'll hear it here on City News. I wanted to spend some time today with City Councillor for Knoxdale Maryville Ward, and that is Sean Devine. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sam. Good morning.
It's hard to believe, Sean, that, coming up on a year on that May long weekend, this region was really rocked by the derecho and all of the, the tragedy that came out of that, the lost lives, obviously the loss of property and the damage done, being out of power, all of those things that came from that. Hard to believe it's coming up on a year.
Yeah, It doesn't feel that long ago, does it? And I can tell you, so not only, I, like most residents of the city of Ottawa, I definitely experienced the derecho. I also, in my community, 4 years before the derecho, my community went through the tornado of 2018.
Right.
And I can speak from experience that the lingering after effects that residents and communities experience from these kinds of extreme events, they certainly last longer than a year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I find there's times that I drive in an area, especially around that community and especially down sort of Woodruff with all those trees, and it still comes as a shock to me. You'll see an area and I think, oh, those are the trees that we lost during the derechos. So you're right, lots of loss.
And you know what? It definitely comes as a shock, and it's funny that you mentioned trees, because there's always so many things that people can do. We're a very resilient species, and there's always so much that we can do that is within our power to pick things up and to rebuild. But the loss of trees, especially for communities that have a lot of mature trees, is always so hard to bear, because there's nothing you can really do. It takes time. It takes another 50 years for those trees to rebuild. Another after effect of these kinds of events is it's the legacy of fear of having lived through a storm that can take lives. My kids still, when we tell our kids, okay guys, there's going to be a storm tonight, my youngest son says, is it going to be one of those white storms? And what he means, in both the tornado and the derecho, he was in a vehicle where being inside the vehicle was like being inside a car wash, where you just saw water spinning all around, and he sees that as a white storm. It's a terrifying thing. And I know that many residents now, when we hear of a storm coming, we all pull out our phones, and we look at that weather app, and we look at that weather app with a certain amount of anxiety, and that's what you learn to live with.
I think we do definitely take those. I remember exactly where I was. I think we do take those much more seriously. I was in Merrickville when it happened, and I was in a restaurant, and all our phones went off at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that moment. Listen, how can we prepare better for times like this? We, unfortunately, Sean, it kills me to say this, we're going to have another one. There's going to be something that happens in this city.
Well, you know what? Having that knowledge, getting past, having that sober knowledge, this is going to happen again, is definitely a good way to start. Ottawa has now we had pretty devastating floods in 2017 and 2019. We had the tornado that was definitely localized, but it's very impactful in 2018, and now this 2022 derecho. So I think we all have to be cognizant of the fact that there's a pattern here. This is happening. So being aware of that and accepting that is definitely the first step. And I think there are a lot of ways that we can be better prepared. And so yesterday we had an Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee meeting where we received the after action report from the city, where they basically, they gave us a summary of what they learned and what are the measures that are going to be put in place. And I'm confident that the city, I would be scared if the report I got from staff said, we did fantastic, there's nothing we can do to improve. Right. Everybody sit back and we're fine. It was a very compassionate and thoughtful and responsible response from staff that said, obviously there were things that we did well, and there certainly were things that we did well, and there are ways that we can improve. And I think they laid out a list of things that they will be working on that I'm confident of. I can tell you some of what they are if you wish.
Yeah, please do. Please.
So one thing that I think, I like to approach, because I've been through a few of these myself now, and I was very involved in my own community's response to the tornado. And because my community had been so actively engaged in responding to the tornado, when the derecho happened, you saw my community get involved again, but in a far more efficient way. And so having those clear plans in place that are based on experience is really effective. Now, so I like to take an all-hands-on-deck approach to these kinds of things, especially if it's an event of this scale. And in a city like Ottawa, all hands on deck doesn't only mean city staff, but it also means residents who are willing and able to lend a hand. Now, when it comes to city staff, like our city staff did a fantastic job of responding to the derecho. Plenty of people, because of the tornado and the floods, already had a fair amount of emergency response experience, and these people were immediately activated. And I'm grateful for how committed they were, because we have to remember, with a storm of this magnitude, a lot of those city staff who were taking on leadership roles, their own house had lost power. They'd lost a roof. Their families were scared and affected. So I was really grateful for that. But we have a large city staff, and I think what the city now wants to do is to try to increase the amount of staff that can be made available in these situations. So I think there's going to be a lot of training for more staff to be prepared to take a role. And I mean, just like any hockey team, you're only as good as your depth chart. And so it's great if you've got a good first and second line, but you really want your third and your fourth lines to be running solidly as well. But then there's also, like I said, there's our communities. Many hands make light work, and in these kinds of emergencies, I think the best way to pick up the pieces is through an all-hands-on-deck approach. And I'm confident that what the city's going to start doing now is engaging more with communities, with residents, individual residents, but through church groups and community groups and other local leaders on how can we best, take advantage of those resources on hand. And then I think two more things, just to throw two more things that the city's going to be working on, is we're developing a very proactive food security protocol. In the first, we hear this all the time, in the first 72 hours after a storm, that's when, oftentimes residents are left to fend for themselves, because it does take a while to activate resources. Some residents can take care of themselves in those 72 hours, some can't. And we're going to be developing a food security protocol. I'm happy to hear that the Ottawa Food Bank is taking a leadership role in working on that plan, so that we can identify, where are the vulnerable residents that don't have access to food and water, and how can we get that to them. And then finally, during this storm here, we all know, and my ward was definitely hurt by this, that many residents were without power for upwards of 12 days. And in Ward 9, there are a lot of high-rise apartment buildings that not only were without power for 12 days, but those residents up on the 12th floors couldn't get an elevator, couldn't get water, and so forth. And so one thing the city's working on, one thing I'm definitely working on, are what are some of the ways that we can ensure that they do have access to emergency power. That's definitely a long fix. And then the final thing that we as a city have to be kind of prepared for, I don't want to say we were lucky, but whether it was the 2018 tornado or the 2022 derecho, both of those events happened during times of relatively mild weather. If these kinds of events, like you say, Sam, they're going to happen again. But if these kinds of events happen when we have like minus 25, minus 35 weather, that's an entirely different scenario. And so I think it's urgent on the city. It's urgent that we take this seriously, and I know that we are taking this seriously, and we get plans in place, because God forbid, if this happens during that kind of extreme weather event, we're looking at a different ballgame here.
Absolutely. Sean, thanks so much for joining us. Just before I let you go, we only have about 30 seconds, but do you know how you're going to vote yet in terms of the proposal of the hotel at the airport and that $13 million tax?
Well, I mean, I always like I can tell you where I'm leaning. I'm definitely leaning not in support of it. I always like to hear all the arguments. I don't think it's me being practicing democracy fairly if I say out loud ahead of time what I'm voting. I think it's fair to both sides to hear the arguments, but I can tell you that I'm not necessarily sympathetic to the idea of funding hotels in that way. So I can tell where I'm leaning, which
thanks,
would be
Sean.
not to support it.
No, that was really helpful. I appreciate it very much, and thanks for sharing about the emergency preparedness as well. That was very helpful.
Thanks for asking. I'm glad you're concerned about it.
Thank you. Sean Devine, City Councillor for Knoxdale, Maryville Ward. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. was a lot. I think I need a nap.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning. We all know it takes a team effort in any sport and with any challenge. You can be a part of the winning team that shuts out impaired driving. Whether you're out on the town or just hanging out with friends, drink responsibly. Always have a plan for a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your friends. You'll be helping to shut out impaired driving.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine. On the next Fit Over 50, join us for some floor exercises. We'll be working the core, we'll be exercising your full body and stretching. We'll see you then.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support.
Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 31st. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, -1. In Smiths Falls, it is 1 degree. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Breaking news from Parliament Hill, where the federal government has given the final approval to the massive telecom merger between Rogers and Shaw Communications. The $26 billion deal can now go ahead, but it comes with strict conditions and steep penalties. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with the details.
This deal has been 2 years in the making and was originally blocked by the federal government until Quebecor's Videotron agreed to buy Shaw's Freedom Mobile as a part of the deal, ensuring a fourth national wireless provider in our country. Innovation Minister François-Philippe Champagne says he's approved the license transfer because it will improve competition.
And most importantly, compete in a way that will drive down prices for Canadians.
But the deal comes with a list of 21 strict, legally binding conditions, including Videotron lowering prices to 20% below its competitors and Rogers spending more than $6 billion to expand internet and 5G service throughout Canada and establishing a new Western headquarters in Calgary to create 3,000 new jobs. If the companies fail to live up to the conditions, they face legal penalties of $200 million for Videotron and $1 billion for Rogers. The minister is also putting all telecoms in Canada on notice, saying if he doesn't see prices reduced in a reasonable amount of time, he'll take further action.
But to seek further legislative and regulatory powers to drive down prices in Canada. And I can tell you that everything is on the table.
Rogers is the parent company of this station. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andreacci.
Periods of snow today for Ottawa and Smiths Falls, but also some mixing. A guaranteed high of only 2 degrees, but we do see those temperatures climb overnight. That's when we get into a changeover to rain. And the rain is going to be steady early Saturday, about 5 to 10 millimeters. Highs near 12, but we fall to -10 Saturday night. We'll change over to flurries. Sunny and cool again for Sunday. Highs only near 2, and that's the guaranteed high today, 2 degrees.
I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
We're
covering lots of very important topics today. We're going to be speaking with Bruce Heyman a little bit later, of course, former U.S. Ambassador to Canada. We're going to be spending some time with him talking about Donald Trump a little bit later, and Vern White, former police chief, and of course he worked for the RCMP as well, is going to spend some time talking about that Mass Casualties Commission report that came out of the mass shooting in Nova Scotia, April 18th and 19th of 2020. Very important day as well. It is International Transgender Day of Visibility, and we wanted to speak with Faye Johnstone. Hi, Faye.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on today.
Faye, when you think about, a day like today and recognizing this day, what are the objectives of today?
So today is all about celebrating the accomplishments and the contributions that trans and gender diverse people make all across our country and all around the world. And it's a counterpoint to Trans Day of Remembrance in November, where our communities come together to mourn those whose lives have been lost to anti-trans hate. So it's an opportunity to uplift, celebrate, and highlight, nonetheless, how far we still have to go for trans rights and trans justice.
And Faye, you're the executive director of Wisdom to Action, and I appreciate you joining me today. There's so much that that's looked at in terms of the budget. Everybody has their eyes on maybe 2 or 3 areas. You really had your eyes on how the 2S LGBTQ plus community was represented in this budget. Did you see this budget come down with any initiatives for your community?
I was thoroughly disappointed with this budget. This government, over the last 8 years, has done some really good work for queer and trans communities, but it's nowhere near the scale that our communities need. And in the past 3 years, I have seen, we as a country have witnessed a huge rise in anti-2S LGBTQ hate. We saw a 64% increase in hate-motivated violence towards our communities in 2021. And so this budget was an opportunity for this government to show where they stand on queer and trans issues, to put new commitments, new funding behind combating anti-trans hate. And it was a missed opportunity through and through. There was nothing, next to nothing. There were a couple mentions, a couple, acceptable little pieces of commitment, but there was nothing substantive for our communities, which makes me worry that this government is turning a blind eye to the rising hate that is putting fear in the eyes of trans people all across Canada right now.
And Faye, I've had this conversation with, with organizers of Pride events. I've had this conversation, especially regarding Black History Month. A lot of initiatives are really just feeling symbolic, and not that they don't have a place. Don't misunderstand me, but it's only important. It's only sort of key if we also have actions and an actual timeline and education and all of those different pieces tied in, because you can't just a friend of mine always says you can't put a flag on it, slap a flag on it and say that you're representative of the Pride community. If you're a business, for instance, what are you doing every single day to support the Pride initiatives? So I ask you the same question. I mean, if these things are just symbolic, then that's not going to move the needle at all.
Absolutely. It's easy to put out a statement on a day like today. It's easy to say, trans people deserve rights. Woohoo. And that's positive. The symbolism does matter. But 48% of trans people in Canada make under $30,000 a year. 84% of trans people avoid public spaces, at least one public space, because of fears of hate and harassment. And so I really worry that our community is used as a symbol of moral values rather than as recognized as human beings. And so, we need investments in our local LGBTQ organizations like Kind Space, 10 Oaks Project, and Max Ottawa here in our city. And we need initiatives to fight rising misinformation and rising hate targeting our communities. That is a responsibility for our municipality, our provincial government, and our federal government. But everyone seems happy to just put out these empty statements and pass the buck to somebody else.
Faye, talk to me a little bit about maybe, and obviously not using any names, but somebody that that approaches you and just feels a bit lost in this country.
Yeah, I think I don't expect everyone to understand everything about trans people generally, right? Like, I'm not expecting everyone to know what a trans person is. I'm often the first person many non-trans people have met who identifies as trans. And so I think it really does come back to that recognition of humanity and the basic right to dignity. We all, trans folks aren't asking for anything radical. We're asking to not be harassed. We're asking to not be kicked out of our homes when we come out, to not lose our jobs because our colleagues mistreat us, and have access to basic healthcare that we need. And so I think we are often turned into this big, political agenda, but at the end of the day, it really is, human rights, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's all we're really asking for.
Mm-hmm. And if you had, a minute with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, what would you say to him about the trans community?
I would tell him that for decades, our communities fought to give this next generation of young queer and trans kids a little bit of breathing room. Homophobia and transphobia is still alive in our schools and our community, but for the first time in our lifetimes, these kids have the words and the language and the space to describe themselves and to be themselves. But what I'm seeing right now is that breathing room restricting because of far-right extremism, because of attacks on our rights. And I am terrified that the next generation of trans kids will not grow up with the better health outcomes, the better economic prospects, the better health care that they deserve. And we need this government to act now in a meaningful and powerful way before we follow the path of the United States, where trans people's safety and rights are being targeted in a horrendous way like we've never seen before. And his government is a champion of gender and sexual diversity, but we need them to back up trans people right now before it's too late.
Have we taken a step back?
I think I hope we haven't, but I have never seen the kinds of fear in trans people's eyes that I am seeing right now. I have received thousands of hateful messages in the last month alone. I have been targeted by people like Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro. And so there is this rising tide of hate. I really hope that in Canada, our society has come far enough to recognize that is hate, but I am scared because, again, I see the fear in the eyes of those young trans kids, and they just want to be kids. They don't want to have to be fighting for their rights. And so I don't have the data to tell you if we're rolling backwards, but every signal that I'm seeing is that it's getting worse and it's getting scarier out there.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And I'm sorry that you faced that.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, we have allies in the labor movement. Our feminist organizations are on side with us in a huge way. And our sector as queer and trans organizations is coming along. But we need leadership, not just from community and from nonprofits. We need leadership from politicians and government.
And I hear it in your voice, Faye. I hear the passion and I hear the concern at the same time. And I haven't lost hope. I mean, obviously I'm an ally, but I haven't lost hope. And I can tell you haven't either.
And that, today is about that hope. It's about celebration. It's about visibility. It's a moment to say trans kids need to be protected. Trans rights are human rights. And I think that is an integral message to take away amidst all the hate, is that message of love and celebration. Always a pleasure, Faye. Thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for having me on. Faye Johnstone joining us, Executive Director of Wisdom to Action. It is International Transgender Day of Visibility, and we wanted to spend some time today with Faye. When we come back, Gary Dimmick is going to be here. He's a journalist with the Ottawa Citizen. He talks about a lot of topics that maybe miss the other media representatives. So Gary's going to join us today to talk about a story he's been covering. And then we're going to be speaking with Vern White about the Mass Casualties Commission report and the incredible work that's been done there. Has this been enough for families? We'll find out what Vern thinks. And Bruce Heyman's going to join us because, of course, Donald Trump is indicted. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Ladies, leave your man at home tonight.
Hey, this is Dominique Orley. I'm a part of Encore 3, and be sure to catch my set this week.
We are going downtown, leaving out all your stress and your sorrow.
Should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old.
Eddie!
Johnson, how you back? Get to it, man!
Appears there's some kind of difficulty.
Seems to be something loose up there. Here comes old fellow! Just once more, little girl, and you can rest.
Her last race and still undefeated, the Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
Here comes the 67. They score! How's that for your first of the season?
Another highlight reel goal. Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play! Snapshot scores!
He is making a statement, isn't he?
Oh, that's a beauty of a shot from the freshman.
The OHL playoffs.
What a goal!
On Rogers TV.
Hi, I'm Justice.
And I'm Nia.
And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support.
Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for spending time with us here on City News. I'm Sam Laprade. It's always a good day when I see Gary Dimmick in the lineup. Gary Dimmick is joining us, a journalist with the Ottawa Citizen. Crime Garden is your handle. How are you, Gary?
Well, pretty good, Sam. I'm not a big fan of lineups, but I'm pretty good today.
There you go. Actually, when I see the topic we're talking about today, it's so interesting that this story has really come this far, Gary. This is a story that that I followed, obviously, because I read pretty much every word you write, I think, in the Ottawa Citizen. And the title of this is Ottawa Firefighter Feared Reprisal for Coming Forward in Choking Case. Walk me through this story.
Say that again, sorry?
Walk me through this case a little bit.
Yeah, that's the fourth story I think I wrote. So it all begins in September, let's say September 14, and they're in the lunchroom. They got junior firefighters. This is Station 47 out in Barrhaven. Yeah, junior firefighters, and at that particular fire station, I've heard of this at other fire halls as well. It's essentially it's a soapy tradition of competition dishes where junior firefighters, believe it or not, fight for the right to do the dishes.
Right.
And they do this in their way of showing or to impress senior staff that the first one on the chores can go in, bing, bang, boom. So you get two junior firefighters competing to do the dishes in the lunchroom, and the one firefighter who identifies as non-binary, who is not non-binary, said they were subjected to harassing comments, like 14 of them, in fact, and that during the dishwashing competition to get in there first, they accused the other firefighter of tossing the dishes into the sink when that firefighter was doing the dishes. And then there was a twisting of an arm, according to the complainant. And then the complainant also said in their complaint to Ottawa Fire Services, they said that the competing firefighter had, believe it or not, choked them. And the way that they described it, Sam, and for your listeners, is they described it as two hands on the neck and getting lifted off the ground, feet dangling.
Wow.
Now, when the fire department looked into that, they concluded, after talking to witnesses, everybody that was around, they concluded that the firefighter did their conclusion, not mine, that the firefighter did not make any of those harassing comments. They did commit the violence, though, not the harassing comments, but the violence. But what's interesting there is that there's always two different versions to everything, sometimes 4 or 5, but while they've concluded that the person was choked, and it was not the way that they had described it in their complaint. This was more of what they said started out as a mutual, consensual, their words, not mine, shoving and pushing match, and then you've got this hand or this motion with the one hand that goes and it kind of chokes the throat. And that's where it stands, and that all happened in September. The Ottawa Fire Department was looking into it. The Ottawa Police Department said, hey, guys, hold off on this. Wait until we're finished our criminal case. They said, no problem. It delayed it. So then you had, a while ago, you had the two firefighters, a junior firefighter and a captain. They were actually charged by the Ottawa Police Department with the choking offense. The one firefighter and the other firefighter, the captain, was charged with failing to provide medical assistance, that kind of thing. And the allegation there is that the complainant was, according to their complaint, discouraged from reporting this reported workplace violence issue. And that's where it stands. It hasn't gone to court. Nothing's been proved yet. And you got all these internal reports that are floating around. And it's quite interesting because, it's the last place that you'd think that anybody would get
That's
choked.
What I was thinking.
Right? And I'm not saying anybody got choked, but internally they proved that. Threshold in the criminal court, way, way different. Who knows? This case hasn't gone to court, and I don't know if it will. Yeah, long way off of that. Nothing's been proved. There clearly, there are two different sides of the versions here. Somewhere lies the truth. Don't know where. I don't know any of these firefighters. First I'd heard of them, junior firefighters like this. Captain also charged. What's interesting too is that the Ottawa Fire Department, they didn't mess around with this. They terminated the firefighter. It would have been on February 24th.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, February 24th. Their police, their union must be a little bit different than the police departments, because in the police department, which is the same city, it's all the same funds. As you know, cops in Ottawa don't get suspended without pay.
Right.
They get suspended with pay, sometimes for up to 4 or 5 years, waiting for the trial to finally come up when they're getting paid. Well, the same city with Ottawa Fire Department, they don't wait until the conclusion, in this case anyway, of the criminal case. They fired Buddy right away, and that's a huge difference. What's interesting is it's the same city, but two different rules for two different columns, and it probably has a lot to do with their association. right?
For sure.
The other word is not union, but it is essentially the same thing.
We're speaking with Gary Dimmick. Sorry, I was just going to say, we're speaking with Gary Dimmick from the Ottawa Citizen. You've covered a lot of things, Gary. Does this, I've never really heard of anything like this happening within, and maybe I'm just naive, but within the fire department. It always seems like, I mean, obviously there's people, personalities, and people don't get along, but is this rare?
Yeah, it's hard to know if it's rare because the thing that's most rare about the Ottawa Fire Department is that, unlike the Ottawa Police Department, when there is a member who is paid by the city to work for the city in such a position of trust as a firefighter is, as a police officer is, the big difference, and it's hard to know if it's rare because, unlike the Ottawa Police Department, the Ottawa Fire Department, the disciplinary hearings, have you ever heard of one? Have you ever been invited to one? Is there a list for them? Are they even public? I don't know. I don't know. I asked Buddy over at the fire department, are the disciplinary hearings for the Ottawa Fire Department public or are they private? Is it a secret? They didn't know, and I don't expect them to know. They've probably never been asked. The Ottawa Police Department, all of their disciplinary hearings, secrecy aside, all the police department hearings, all the disciplinary hearings are public. And so it's hard to know if this is rare. I would hope that it's rare. And, I'll wait to see what happens in court, if in fact it ever gets to court, up for a judge to decide.
For sure. Gary, thanks so much. You always bring such interesting stories to us here, and you're covering those stories that we may not hear about. So I really appreciate it very much.
Can I add one thing? We got a minute?
Yeah, 1 minute. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay. So the complainant in this case, the non-binary firefighter, during the investigation, which was to investigate their complaint, they were advised in writing not to talk about this with any co-workers or members of the fire department, and a failure on their part, to abide by those instructions could have ended up in their discipline up to and including termination of your employment. And that's the deputy fire chief saying that. Anyway, it's 2023. Anyway, thanks so much, Sam. Really good to hear your voice.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to hear yours as well. Gary Dimmick, a journalist, of course, with the Ottawa Citizen. He's been covering stories for decades, and really value what Gary brings to our show. He's always so generous with his time. Lots of stories we're covering here on City News. Devastating story, of course, we're following out of Akwesasne. 6 bodies discovered starting at about 5 o'clock yesterday. We don't know many details yet, but we're following very closely. We do understand that there was a child included in this tragedy, and we do understand that they're, for whatever reason, had a Canadian passport. And so this story is far from over. Obviously, we wanted to take a deep dive into that story. When we come back, Vern White is going to be here. Vern White, of course, our former Ottawa police chief, of course, former senator as well. He worked for the RCMP. His perspective on the Mass Casualties Commission report out of Nova Scotia, which was delivered yesterday, will be very interesting. I'm really anxious to hear what Vern White has to say. We're thinking about Nova Scotia today. We're thinking about the families of that devastating shooting, of course, and the fires that happened April 18th and 19th of 2020. Vern White's going to join us. And then after Vern, we're going to take a short break, and Bruce Heyman's going to be here. Of course, Bruce, former U.S. ambassador. He spent a lot of time here in Canada. I wanted to call Bruce today because Donald Trump, of course, is in the news again. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, tacos aren't only for Tuesday. I make a Mexican taco feast for a crowd.
For 25 years, you've been helping to make our roads safer by doing the right thing. You've been the designated driver, you've stayed over, called home, you've called a cab or a friend, and planned ahead. Let's keep doing the right thing. Support sober driving by getting yourself and your friends home safely.
Do the right thing.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Patini, the host of the RTV quiz show, the hottest show on television. It's the hilarious quiz show where you, the viewers, play for valuable non-existent prizes. It's got great trivia, fun facts, and a lot of laughs, all blended together in a perfect cocktail of edutainment. So join us Wednesdays at 7:30 right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 31st. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 1 degree. In Smith Falls, it is 2. And here's what's making news this hour. Federal Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne says the government has secured 21 legally enforceable commitments from Rogers and Videotron to bolster competition and drive down prices. Champagne announced this morning that Ottawa has given the green light to Rogers Communications' $20 billion takeover of Shaw Communications. He has approved the transfer of Shaw-owned Freedom Mobile's wireless licenses to Quebec's Videotron and says he expects to see Freedom's wireless prices in Ontario and Western Canada lowered by about 20%. Authorities in the Mohawk territory of Akwesasne says an infant is missing after the bodies of 6 migrants of Indian and Romanian descent were pulled from the river on Thursday. The bodies, including that of a second child under 3, were found in the St. Lawrence River in the community that straddles the Canada-U.S. border. The deputy chief of the Akwesasne Mohawk Police Service says the victims were trying to enter the U.S. illegally from Canada, and she told reporters today the 6 people were from 2 families, one of Romanian descent and the other composed of Indian citizens. And Ontario's minimum wage set to rise to $16.55 an hour on October 1st. It marks a 6.8% boost from the current rate of $15.5 an hour, an increase tied to inflation. The government says the increase means someone making minimum wage and working 40 hours per week would see their pay increase by nearly $2,200 per year. Labour advocates and opposition critics have said Ontario should introduce a $20 minimum wage. City News time is 11:32. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, if I take you back to April 18th and 19th of 2020, you know, we were at the height of COVID and hearing the devastating news coming out of Nova Scotia that so many people lost their lives. 22 people lost their lives at the hands of a gunman. And all the tragedy in terms of the fires. It was just such a devastating time in this country. And I spoke with one of my colleagues at City News in Halifax, and he was saying, I don't know if we'll ever recover, Sam. I don't know if this community will ever heal. This commission report that came down yesterday, Mass Casualties Commission report, delivered yesterday. This has been in the works for a long, long time, 76 days of hearings. And we know that the commissioners obviously took this role very, very seriously. This report, the executive summary alone, is 317 pages. This is a big report. When I heard the report had come down yesterday, I knew there was only one person I needed to talk to today, and that is Vern White, and he joins me now. Hi, Vern.
Hey, how are you, buddy?
Good, good. Vern is, of course, former Ottawa police chief, former senator, worked for the RCMP. Vern, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions first off. Have you had a chance to even, I know it's a very big document, have you had a chance to digest some of this report?
Yeah, I looked at a number of the recommendations kind of generally to try and see. To be fair, I've been reading and listening to a lot of the testimony over the last year-ish, I guess, as well. So I'm not surprised by some of what I've been reading. I kind of expected it, but I think, so I have looked at it. I haven't read the whole report, to be fair. It's extensive, even more than I had expected. But I think that takes into account the seriousness of what happened and the seriousness of the mistakes that were made.
For sure. And I will say, for anybody that hasn't pulled up the document, it's all open. It's very transparent from that perspective. They have done a very beautiful, I'll call it beautiful job of recognizing the people that lost their lives. They have a little bit of history of each of them, some photos. And I think it was really important, Vern, to put the faces to this horrific time and remember the people behind this. So I think that was very well done. They go into, obviously, a number of recommendations, 130 in total. 75 of them pointed right at the RCMP. How important was that for Canadians that the RCMP was a big part of the story?
Well, obviously, if you go back and look at, the days following and the public outrage at the lack of response by the RCMP, and I don't think that's the individuals, because I think the police officers. Sorry, somebody else calling me as well.
No worries.
I apologize. I don't think the individual officers is what the public was outraged at. I think they were outraged at the organizational response, because the officers who responded, I think, did what they could do based on the training, the equipment, and the number of resources they had. But I think what the public looked at, and I think what permeates throughout this report, is the organizational concerns, the appearance, at least, of political involvement, post in particular. But I think they also looked at the overall Nova Scotia police response. I mean, we're looking at a province that, has 3 police services. I mean, it has a number of small ones, but 3 major police agencies, one in Cape Breton, one in Halifax, and the RCMP as the provincial police service. And I think what this will probably cause is that provinces like Nova Scotia look more closely at the service they're providing and the manner in which policing is provided, so that there's actually better interconnectivity between police agencies when they're responding to incidents like this, rather than being dissected and operating individually, even regardless of where it occurs. So I think there's some really good information comes out of this, and hopefully now people will actually take the recommendations to heart, because it meant a lot to the people of Nova Scotia. I'm from Nova Scotia, and after it happened, I had family members of mine calling saying, what the hell's going on with policing in Nova Scotia? And I think now is an opportunity to look forward and say, okay, how can we improve policing in Nova Scotia, and hopefully in every province in the country.
For sure, because it's so much about communications. I mean, that's one thing that I thought you've always done really well, Vern, in terms of your role, is the communications piece, and to hear the breakdown of communications that happened while this was going on, the communications to obviously the public to avoid any other casualties. That was obviously a misstep in terms of the RCMP. Post-event communication, this, so much of this is about how quickly they responded from a communications perspective. And I'll be honest, I didn't think the interim commissioner did a very good job yesterday of saying he hadn't even had the chance to read the report yet. And that really, the body language around that, I think that was very, very unfortunate, because to be honest with you, it sounded like a bit of a cultural thing, the way that he phrased that. I thought that was very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, you're right. Communication is key. It's the public don't always expect to know everything, but they expect to know something, and they expect to have a level of transparency. Now, we can speak directly to the incident. Obviously, tweeting out a warning was not enough, nor should it ever be enough. And the concern that it's somebody dressed like a police officer with a police car. So what would happen if we told the public? The concern with that comment, and I've heard it made right afterwards, is that what the heck do you think happens if you don't tell the public? Mm-hmm. And that's what we ended up seeing, right? There's a level of safety that people have if they see a police car, regardless of what's going on around them. They see a police car, they're not running away from it. So there is a way that communication could have been put out there that, look, somebody is impersonating a police officer, they have a vehicle that looks like a police car. We asked you to bunker into your residence, to not leave your residence, to not open the door. There's a number of things they could have done without and try to reduce the jeopardy people were facing. Mm-hmm. So on top of that, I think the ability to manage the incident immediately after, engage with the public about, look, you know what? Here's what happened. Here's our response. It was or wasn't good enough, and here's what we're going to do, and here's the that discussion wasn't clear to the public, I don't think, either. Instead, there's lots of finger pointing, to be fair, between police agencies as well, and between government officials and police agencies, which is not helpful. So it looked like nobody was in charge, and maybe that's true, maybe nobody was. But I think there needed to be a lot of clarity around what was happening, what happened. Here's the review we're going to do. Here's what, here, as we're going through that, here's the issues we found. Here's our response. Like, the public have an expectation that they know what's going on, what happened, what you're going to do about it. Mm-hmm. No matter what I felt in Ottawa, and I remember, the incident we had in our cell block, which the public was appalled at. They wanted to hear what you're going to do about it as much as anything else. Absolutely. And they need to be spoken to as somebody that the police serve, and I'm not sure that they felt like they were being served by the police in the post event media scrums and discussions and in communications. I think was very important. To be fair, I only read the interim commissioner's comments yesterday. I didn't see much else. But as you said, a number of reporters questioned that he hadn't seen it beforehand. I'm not sure. Sometimes you get a preview of these beforehand, like particularly in coroner's inquest and stuff. I'm not sure if the RCMP had a preview to what the report was going to say.
And in fairness,
somebody should have asked that question probably.
For sure. And in fairness, it wasn't, and I don't know how this is going to make sense to you. It wasn't the fact that he hadn't read the report. If he was just handed the report, I understand he hadn't read it. It was the way he answered that. So maybe it's just I'm being sensitive.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this.
No, look, you know what? This is a sensitive issue. Mm-hmm. It's okay to be sensitive, trust me.
So I want to ask you this, because I really, you and I have had lots of conversations regarding this topic. So when I think about the focus on this particular commission in regards to family violence, intimate partner violence, and everything that involves, the layer of that on this commission, how important is it that we make changes in that area when it comes to policing?
Well, I think it's extremely important, and it's going to link back in with almost everything we continue to talk about in Canada today, which is mental health. Because the lack of resources across the country is appalling right now when it comes to mental illness, the inability to engage mental health services when you need it. But certainly when we look at the intimate violence piece, a lot of people who are victims of intimate violence will say that themselves and often the offender have been trying to get help and have not been able to access that. Mm-hmm. And I think it was in Nova Scotia a few years ago when a former military member of the military shot and killed his spouse, and the issue there around the fact that he had been trying to access appropriate mental health care and the family felt wasn't gaining access to that. So I think that's a real issue. But I also think, a number of places, if you go to, I think it's Waterloo, and Durham now have a combined facility that has family services, social services, police officers, specific mental health, specific resources to deal with mental health care from a more holistic, I hate using that word, but it's true, holistic perspective, and able to actually bring to bear all of those resources in dealing with some of these cases, I think is a much better model than most communities in Canada have. Mm-hmm. And it's not inexpensive, but the impact of not having that when it comes to intimate partner violence is obvious to all of us. And look, we can go to even family violence, and the individual who shot and killed the two police officers outside of Toronto 2 weeks ago. It seems like yesterday. 2 weeks ago, when there was a violent situation that had occurred a number of times in the home, 16-year-old being violent towards family members, and they argued that they had been trying to get the appropriate level of care and it wasn't available to them.
Right.
So the lack of resources when it comes to mental health in Canada is at a dangerous low when policing are looking at 20-25% of the calls for service are mental health calls, and the vast majority on first instance are non-criminal. But really, the cops shouldn't be the one helping people down out of that tree, right? We need some really highly skilled mental health workers to be engaged hand in glove to actually do that. So I think the linkages are vast. So it for sure more needs to be done when it comes to partner violence.
Unfortunately, we only have a minute, but I have to ask you this question. Brenda Lucki, was her retirement coincidental?
Oh, I don't think anybody expected that she would extend beyond her 5 years, and her 5 years was up. Whether she left a month earlier or so because of the report coming out is possible, but that's not typically how it happens. Typically, they would stick around for the report to come out so that somebody else walks in afterwards and delivers on the recommendations, if that's going to happen. So I don't think there was a plan that she would duck out before this happened. Certainly, I don't think there was a plan by government that she would leave early so that she wouldn't have to respond, because realistically, you want the person who's been there through this, as difficult as it is, to try and handle the original or the initial response so that you can hand it off to somebody fresh who can run with it. Mm-hmm. As you saw now, right now, the interim commissioner owns the report, even though he wasn't the commissioner for all but 3 weeks of what happened even after the incident. Mm-hmm. So it's more difficult for him now as a result. If he had walked in a week's time after she dealt with the initial media, he could say, look, here's the 25 things I'm looking at specifically that the RCMP have to engage in. He could walk through that, and instead now he's going to be chasing this a little bit.
Vern White, thank you so much. I appreciate your time always.
Okay, take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend.
You too. Vern White joining us. We're going to take a short break. Bruce Heyman's going to be here, former U.S. ambassador. We're going to talk to him about, well, you probably guessed it, Donald Trump. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
That's the way I kill my skill sharpen, because I've been here sharpening.
What's going on, y'all? It's Jay Morris, a.k.a. your favorite light skin, and you're going to check out my performance on Encore Ottawa 3 coming up this week. Let's go.
All again, murderation, 911, call it in. Me, I murder every...
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll introduce you to the chef of the East India Company. They're actually going to be sharing one of their famous recipes for one of their sauces, so you're going to want to tune in for that and be sure to take some notes. Also on the show, we'll share a fabulous artist. Oh my goodness, he's a stone carver, and he works with stones that are about 3 feet high and 60 pounds. All that and more on Friday's Daytime Ottawa, right here on Rogers TV.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence of drugs of any kind, or a combination of drugs and alcohol, and you fail a roadside test, your license will be suspended immediately for up to 30 days. You'll pay a penalty of $198. And you can be charged with a criminal offense of impaired driving, the same as alcohol. Driving high is never okay.
Hi, I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
Here comes the 67. They score! How's that for your first of the season? Another highlight reel goal. Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play!
He is making a statement, isn't he?
Oh, that's a beauty of a shot from the freshman.
The OHL playoffs.
What a goal!
On Rogers TV.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And we're back on City News, and I want to get right to our next guest. I value his time so much. Bruce Heyman is here, former U.S. ambassador to Canada. Hello, Bruce.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Joining me on a day like today, I really appreciate it. We know that obviously lots of talk in the United States today about the indictment of Donald Trump. Did you know this day was coming, Bruce?
Well, I assumed at one point in time he would be confronted with something like this. I didn't know it would be today. But, you know, the reality is he's a charlatan. He is somebody who has, you know, no belief that he is subject to the laws and rules of our country. And he's demonstrated that throughout his life. And so here he is. He's under investigation by any number of different agencies, states and federal. And we all know many of these, from classified documents to leading an insurrection on January 6th to trying to manipulate the outcome of an election in Georgia to tax fraud issues and paying off a porn star for, you know, for the benefit of his election, all of that. And there's probably more that we aren't aware of. And so one had to assume that at some point in time, some number of these would result in, you know, some indictments. And so this is the first one to fall. And I don't know whether there will be more or not, but he's under investigation in a number of fronts. And so it shouldn't be surprising if there are more. But it's a sad day. I mean, you know, this is a stain, and it has been a stain on our country. And unfortunately, this continues.
And I think what's so tragic about it, and once again, I'm coming from a Canadian's perspective, and your perspective is always welcome. I think from my perspective, I think about all the things that are going on in the world. Like, you know, I think about obviously the war. I think about, you know, immigration issues. You know, there's just so much going on in the world. And to have the attention, and I guess this is what, if you deem him a narcissist, this is what narcissists love, is all the attention's on them. So all the attention today is on Donald Trump. And so all these other issues take a back seat. And that's what breaks my heart, to be honest with you.
Look, you're completely right. He sucks the air out of the room. And in some ways, you know, it may be, you know, helping to cement his political aspirations, in that he'll use it to raise money, he'll use it to galvanize support, and this is clearly something that those that support him will rally around him. But regardless of that, we're a country of laws. And I think what this demonstrates is that there is no one above the law. And we're at a point in time where the law has to follow its natural course.
And he's calling, Bruce, for people to react. He's saying this is going to result in something horrible. And I don't want to quote him, to be honest with you. But he's using the kind of language he used, ironically, in January 6th. I mean, so no lessons learned, right?
Yeah, very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. I'm just hopeful that, people realize that if they go about and create violence as a result of this, they too will be subject to the rule of law. As many people, hundreds now, have been either convicted or pled guilty to January 6th. Many are still, awaiting trial. And, we're a country of laws and rules. And, that's the route we're in. And, it's a dangerous path if he continues around, inciting people to be supportive of this cause in a violent way, because he puts himself in further jeopardy with the law, because that's a whole nother set of crimes that he might be, building against himself.
For sure. Not to mention, he has to look at his wife and say that, our family's going to be known for me paying off a porn star. I can't imagine what the conversation at the kitchen table is this morning. But, when you know that this week, 6 people lost their lives to more gun violence at a school, 3 of them being 9 years old, those issues aren't being talked about today. The discussion is Donald Trump, and I really have a really difficult time with that. What do you think this weekend will mean? We know that he, from what we're understanding from reports, planning on surrendering on Tuesday. What do you think this weekend leading up to Tuesday will look like?
So my sense is, at least what's happening over the last 24 hours or less than that, is that his supporters, political supporters, have galvanized around attacking the district attorney and attacking him individually. And I would not be surprised if that continued throughout the weekend. Talk shows and TV, etc. I think people who don't like him are going to be talking about the arraignment and whether he'll be in handcuffs or whether, we're going to have a picture of him when he's, criminally processed. We should all, and I urge Canadians and Americans in the center here who are not on extremes of hate or love of this man, to find a path to just letting our justice process work its course. He, and like everyone who's charged, is presumed innocent unless proved guilty in the court of law. This is an indictment. This is not a conviction. That being said, it's also not one individual bringing this. This is a grand jury, a jury of, in theory, of peers, of people who are citizens who've been impaneled to hear the facts of the case and to make charges. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they've done. And we should all wait and see. We've been seeing reporting that there are more than 30 charges of business fraud. We should wait and see the details of the charges that are going to be brought against this man. And we shouldn't assume it's just the paying off of a porn star or something of that nature. It sounds to me it's going to be much more in-depth and complicated than that. And so let the process go, and let's see where we are in a few days. But my sense is this is going to happen very quickly, and we're going to see the depth and breadth of what these charges look like. And then we'll see the response that comes.
Bruce, thank you so much. You're just I always love our conversations. You're calm, a lot of integrity. I really Really appreciate the conversation today. Stay safe, okay?
You too. Be well.
Bruce Heyman joining us today, former U.S. ambassador to Canada. Really value Mr. Heyman's time. We're getting ready for a very busy lunch for you today. Alison Fair will be here. Jennifer Madigan will be here. We hope you'll be here. Stay with us on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
On the next Fit Over 50, join us for some floor exercises. We'll be working the core, we'll be exercising your full body and stretching. We'll see you then.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in a police car, an ambulance, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 31st. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 1 degree. In Smiths Falls, it is 2. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. And we have breaking news from Parliament Hill, where the federal government has given the final approval to the massive telecom merger between Rogers and Shaw Communications. The $20 billion deal can now go ahead, but it comes with strict conditions and steep penalties. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney has more.
The deal's been 2 years in the making and was originally blocked by the federal government until Quebecor's Videotron agreed to buy Shaw's Freedom Mobile as a part of the agreement, ensuring a fourth national wireless provider in our country. Innovation Minister François-Philippe Champagne says this will improve competition.
And most importantly, compete in a way that will drive down prices for Canadians.
But the deal comes with a list of 21 strict conditions, including Videotron lowering prices 20% below its competitors and Rogers spending more than $6 billion to expand internet and 5G service throughout Canada. If the companies fail to abide, they face legal penalties of $200 million for Videotron and $1 billion for Rogers. The minister is also putting all telecoms on notice, saying if he doesn't see prices reduced, he'll take further action.
Legislative and regulatory powers to drive down prices in Canada. And I can tell you that everything is on the table.
But NDP MP Brian Massey argues the deal will not help Canadians.
This is a disaster that will end with less competition, massive layoffs, and higher prices.
Rogers is the parent company of this station. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And with the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andreacci.
Active weather this afternoon moving into Ottawa and Smiths Falls. We've got periods of snow, some mixing also possible. Temperatures just struggling today, guaranteed high of only 2, but temperatures are climbing overnight. We're going to change over to rain into Saturday morning, and then
we climb to near 12, but we fall to minus 10. So we'll see that changeover back to some flurries. The guaranteed high today, 2 degrees.
City News time is 12:03. The head of the Ottawa Hospital is defending a controversial arrangement in which operating rooms are being rented to a private corporation on weekends to deal with the surgery backlog. City News reporter Chris Curris has that story.
Is the Ottawa Hospital's new private weekend surgery clinic taking staff or beds away from regular operations?
While I appreciate the comment, that is not an accurate comment.
CEO Cameron Love tells City News efficiency has improved and there are plans to build a private standalone surgical center that would function as a high-efficiency orthopedic center.
Because we need to probably grow by 30, 40, 50% more capacity, or we are going to struggle with wait time challenges.
And while they're hiring new staff, they need more beds. Love says about 500 more. Chris Curry, City News.
I am Damilola Onime for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, it's lunchtime, everyone. Every day at this time, we invite a couple of community members in to spend time with us to talk about those big news stories of the day, and we feast on them during this lunch. Allison Fair joins us for lunch today. Blue Sky Strategy Group Communications and Media Consultant. Hello, Allison.
Good afternoon.
Thanks so much for spending time with us. Jennifer Madigan, she's here too, Executive Vice President of Syntex Strategic. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me.
We know that this week has been a lot of heavy news. I mean, everything from some tragedy, of course, in Quebec with a fallen police officer. We know that federal budget was big news. We know Roxham Road immigration has been big news. That report that was released yesterday, the mass casualties report out of the horrific death of 22 people in Nova Scotia was horrific as well. Allison, have you had a chance to look at that report at all? I mean, I know it's 3,000 pages in all, but the executive summary at all?
Yeah, I had a look at the executive summary, and first of all, the first thing came to mind was, wow, has this already been 2 years? Like, it just has gone by so quickly. They had a lot to take in, a lot of witnesses. But what I'm seeing here sounds reasonable. It sounds like exactly what we would want from this kind of tragedy to come out, whether or not the federal government and provincial government takes responsibility and acts on the calls for change that were directed at them in the report remains to be seen. I think there's a lot here that they can then look at, and I'd like to see them move on this, especially we continuously have this discussion about arms and firearms in this country to deal with shootings. I mean, we are blessed to not have the types of shootings that we see to our neighbors to the south. But I'd like to see the federal government act on these calls. And what I'd be interesting to see, and I haven't seen it within the last 24 to 48 hours since the report was released, is the conservative government or the conservative response to it, because they do have a lot of criticism to the government's ways of dealing with firearms in this country. So I'd be interested to see how that plays out in terms of the political arena here in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, Allison. We know that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had this to say.
The Mass Casualty Commission did extraordinary work in putting forward thoughtful and transformative recommendations that require us to dig into thoughtfully and at great length. This is something we need to take extremely seriously, and we have always taken very seriously, from issues around gun control to community policing to public safety to governance within policing across this country. There are many issues that we will be taking a long, hard, thoughtful look at, but we understand the need to make real changes, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
I think Mr. Trudeau doesn't have a choice there, Jennifer. Canadians will, I think, especially the people of Nova Scotia, will have very little patience about heel dragging on this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, the report even pointed out how unprepared the RCMP was to act despite recommendations that had come out of previous tragedies. So I think in this case, we're going to need to see movement on these recommendations. And I think situations like this should actually trigger not only an inquiry, but follow-up to say, what have you done at this interval of time? What have you done at that interval of time? The Prime Minister laid out some ideas yesterday, focusing, as Allison said, on weapons, which is important. But what I actually found really interesting were the recommendations around a holistic public health approach that addresses the root causes. That's not easy to do, but critical work that needs to be done. And so I think I'm most interested to see what movement could be made on that and addressing the gender-based violence and this need for a whole of society response. I mean, that's really, really challenging work.
Oh, absolutely. I just spoke about that very thing, Jennifer, with Vern White, the former chief of police here in Ottawa, about that, because there's just this layer that sits there that we're seeing not only in this instance, but other instances across the country. We know that it's a real challenge. I got to tell you, Allison, last night I had a very busy day yesterday, sat down to get caught up on social media and to see the devastating news that 6 bodies were found in Akwesasne near the U.S. border and that 6 people lost their lives. The Prime Minister had this to say.
I think, first of all, our hearts go out to the families of the individuals who perished. This is a heartbreaking situation, particularly given the young child that was among them. This is something that we all have to take a moment of pause and compassion on.
This story, of course, is developing, Allison, but we were hearing that there's a child with a Canadian passport. Of course, they were trying to make their way into the United States that have been found near the St. Lawrence River. This breaks my heart, Allison, on the heels of the fact that Roxham Road was obviously closed. We don't know if those things are connected, but it just really talks about really the migration issues between these two countries.
It definitely does. And when I heard this story, I was like, oh, wow, there is an issue here in terms of transporting, illegal refugees into the United States. I was like, wow, I've never heard that. And then I did a little more research. Apparently, this was an issue in 2015. We, lost 2 men of Indian descent at that time, and it had, put the whole idea of the smuggling on the St. Lawrence River kind of in the spotlight, but I haven't seen anything done since then. And I'm not sure whether it is because of the closing of the border or other things, but it just makes us kind of go, wow, for a family to want to leave this country at any way and take the risk that they did, even though a lot of us have been boating along the St. Lawrence. It kind of puts everything in perspective and trying to understand what it was that this family wanted to do, to leave Canada and go to the United States.
Mm-hmm. It really is interesting. We're following the story, obviously, very closely. Jennifer, what are your thoughts on this story today?
Well, yeah, to Allison's point, I know Akwesasne police say there have actually been 48 incidents of people trying to cross illegally through their territory. And again, I think we have to ask that question of why, try to find out what is that reasoning. And, it's so tragic. It's terrible to see. And unfortunately, it sometimes takes incidents like this for people to stop and really look into it and see what can be done. So, I mean, the only thing you can hope is that that officials will actually try to figure out what's going on and then see what could be done to try to prevent this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Because clearly these families are very desperate. They really feel like there was no other option than this. Mm-hmm. And it's, as a Canadian, it's hard to imagine that people felt that way, but also these days it's not. I mean, it's a challenging time for a lot of people. So try to figure out what's going on and what could be done to prevent people to getting to that point in the first place.
And, I think about a conversation I had yesterday and I've had numerous conversations with the mayor of Cornwall, Justin Towndale, and the pressure, particularly the Roxham Road crossing put his community in. They have a 900 asylum seekers that they're trying to care for with very little help. That's a community of 48,000 people. Not that I'm obviously not sensitive, Allison, you know me. I mean, I've got a heart in terms of the immigration, but it also, putting pressure on a community like that, there has to be some answer here, and I don't think we're going to find it anytime soon.
No, and the fact that both Jennifer and I are pointing out that there was an incident in 2015. We have 48 other attempted crossings are successful. It's like, okay, how many more are we going to need to happen before we start taking action? We're almost at 2015. We're almost 10 years, and nothing seems to been done. And we need to take these things seriously, or they're going to get out of control to a point where we are going, why didn't we do something sooner? And then there'll be a commission, and then there'll be a whole bunch of other things when it could have been prevented a lot sooner. And I think we need to be looking and listening to these communities and saying, okay, they are asking for help. Let's look at ways that we can help them now.
Jennifer, just some last comments from you, and then we'll take a quick break.
Well, I was just going to say, not to say that they're connected because we don't know, but doing something like closing Roxham Road doesn't make a problem disappear, right? It's great to say, look, we took action, we did something, but we really have to recognize that that's really not actually solving or addressing the problem. I think, in particular for Cornwall, they could have done other things where they could have alleviated some of that pressure by moving people into other areas and providing more supports or something. But I think simply closing one crossing doesn't make the problem go away, and I think they need to take other actions to try to sort out the root cause here.
Very well said. Jennifer Madigan joining us, Allison Fair joining us for lunch today. We have lots to talk about today, and we're going to talk about a little bit of a lighter subject today, and that's Ryan Reynolds. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Ladies, leave your man at home tonight.
Hi, this is Dominique Orley. I'm part of Encore 3, and be sure to catch my set this week.
We are going downtown, leaving out all your stress and your sorrow.
Hi, I'm Justice. And I'm Nia. And we believe dreams fuel revolutions. That's why we're engaging with Canadian icons and the causes they support. Join us for these inspiring conversations and find out how you can be revolutionary.
Are you low on food? Struggling to pay the bills? Overwhelmed by life's challenges? When you need support but don't know where to turn, just dial 211. 211 connects you to the programs or services near you.
211, how can I help you?
211, help starts here.
Behold Emily Carr, painter, about to encounter the force that will consume her life.
How tightly they sealed their secrets from me, humble and pleading before the great trees, awaiting the invitation from the Spirit to come meet me halfway. Nothing is still now, everything is alive. At last, I knew I must see through the eye of the totem itself, the mythic eye of the forest.
Seldom able to live by her brush, before she died in 1945, Emily Carr was in the first rank of Canadian painters.
This is my country. What I want to express is here, and I love it. Amen.
Here comes the 67. They score! How's that for your first of the season?
Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play! Steps one scores!
He is making a statement, isn't he?
Oh, that's a beauty of a shot from the freshman.
The OHL playoffs.
What a goal!
On Rogers TV.
On the next episode of Simply Cooking by Chef, tacos aren't only for Tuesday. I make a Mexican taco feast for a crowd.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Thanks so much for joining us on Rogers TV and City News. When I get off air here today, I'm going to be heading across town to our studios for Rogers TV and filling in for the one and only Derek Fage as he has a nice vacation. We're going to be spending time talking with many community members today, so feel free to join us there on Rogers 22. We wanted to spend some time today as well with Allison Fair and Jennifer Madigan. It's lunchtime. We've invited them in for a big conversation today. Let me ask you this, Jennifer, when you think about the rise of random attacks, and we've seen it in Ottawa, we've definitely seen it happening in Toronto, and then we've seen a real tragedy come out of Vancouver. There's a father that's, asked somebody to not vape near his daughter, and he ends up dead. And somebody's recording it, and no one's helping him. I mean, it was just so tragic to see that. Is it concerning? Do you think about it, Jennifer, when you're out and about?
You know what? I was about to say I don't think about it when I'm out and about, but I that would actually be a lie. I do think about it in my neighborhood. I have thought about, when I'm out for walks or doing simple things, making sure that I'm being more aware because there have been some attacks even in my neighborhood or attempted attacks. So I do think about it, and I think it is a symptom of a much bigger issue. Again, some post-pandemic social issues. We had issues going on that were really just amplified during the pandemic. And I think things are just getting worse. I mean, we're hearing there's so many more people now who find themselves unable to cover the basics, dealing with some really difficult decisions. But what about all of the people who were in situations before? And then on top of that, we've got mental health crises and not enough supports out there. I think there are some major issues that we need to tackle and try to, I sound like a broken record here, but try to tackle these issues before they happen, right? Find the upstream areas where you can really make a difference in people's lives rather than only looking, when you listen to some of the political reaction right now, it's, stricter bail, tougher penalties. That's all after it happens. If we can work with organizations on the ground who are trying to find ways to solve these issues, again, before they happen, ways to set people on the right footing earlier on to try to reduce these occurrences.
Very well said. Allison, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm totally in 100% agreement with Jennifer because, we're always finding that governments are reactive. They're not proactive on any of this stuff. And she's right. This is part of a bigger issue. Do I think about it when I'm out? Not really, unless someone cuts me off when I'm driving. And then, or in the case, like I was helping a lady because she was without her lights one night and I couldn't see her. And I pulled up to her and I rolled down the window and saying, your lights, turn your lights on. And she just gave me this violent, dirty look and gave me the finger. And so I think this is part of a larger issue, is that hate and anger is just on the rise in this country, and it's targeting everything. And that, you go to the issue in Vancouver. Canadians have this pent-up anger within inside of them. I wouldn't say everybody, but they're finding ways of releasing it, and not in the best ways. And I think our governments need to start looking at that. And again, as I said, and Jen, you're totally right. We are broken records because we're talking about this over and over again in everything. We need to be reacting. We need to be proactive and not reacting to these situations.
For sure. It's so interesting you mentioned being cut off and the situation about, trying to help somebody. Really, you're trying to help them. There was a friend of mine on Facebook who posted the story about what I spoke about in Vancouver with that father. And he said, boy, have I ever changed my ways since I've become a dad. He said, cut me off in traffic, you won't hear from me. Take my parking spot, you'll never hear from me. He's like, I just go about my day I might be a bit mad. I keep it inside. I'm not saying anything to anybody about that stuff. And I think, I think about even myself, you think, oh, I want to, give I don't think I would ever give anybody the finger, but you want to, sort of maybe I'll beat my horn. There we go. I'll beat my horn. And I think I'm not beeping my horn. I'm just, whatever. I'm just going about my day because I want to go home to my family. There's no two ways about it.
There's cases like that make me actually think about wanting to help someone anymore, right?
Right.
And again, you look at what happened in Vancouver. People started taking video instead of actually helping this gentleman. What does that say about our society now? That you don't want to help someone that is your fellow neighbor and citizen. That's kind of sad.
It has been a very busy week here at City News. Everything from the federal budget, obviously the devastation in Nashville. We covered a little bit about obviously the horrific situation there with leaving 6 people dead again at a school. So I wanted to end the week on a little bit of a softer note. We know, Jennifer, that Ryan Reynolds was in town. And I think I'm the only person that didn't get my picture taken yesterday with Ryan Reynolds. It feels like everyone else did. And we saw that big smile on Mayor Mark Sutcliffe's face. We know that the president as well of Remington was in town, Chris Brady. So this is moving somewhere. But what is it about Ryan Reynolds coming to town that gets this city all abuzz, Jennifer?
I know, we're a little Ryan crazy, right? I think people just like him. I mean, he's not only, is he an actor, he's, I think, an attractive gentleman, but also he just comes across as such a really wonderful guy. Like, I think that's a big part of it, is that he is a star, but he also seems like just a great person. And there's a lot of talk about what he's done for the community in Wales, and people are seeing that and wondering, what's he going to do here in Ottawa if he can take ownership of the Senators. So I just think people think he seems like a truly wonderful guy, and also he's Canadian, which, even better. So we kind of claim him as one of our own.
And he's got such a good sense of humor, Allison. Like, I love his dry stuff is my favorite. I love when he does that, that dry sense of humor, like when there's something going on in the States and he's like, you get mad at what's happening in the States. You think you can just come here and live in Canada. That's not how it works, everyone. He's got such a dry sense of humor. But Allison, when you think about Ryan Reynolds and the possibility of that being announced, does it get you a little bit more excited about our Ottawa Senators?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I did not get a picture with him yesterday either. But I did buy a ticket last night when I heard he was in town, and I went to the game.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And the buzz in the building was tremendous. Like, you walk around the level where he was and people just talking, and then you see people, you run into people and they're like, oh, did you see Ryan Reynolds? And that's all they were talking about. Yeah. So it gives the Ottawa Senators a little bit more something to talk about, other than are they going to stay, or they go? Think about all the stories we've had to cover over the years about the ups and downs of this team, and Ryan Reynolds in this city gives us that kind of good news Cinderella story, I guess you could say, and makes us excited about sports in the city. We get excited about the Red Blacks, we get excited about all this other stuff, but this adds one more level to that. And there's talk, even when the conversations last night about The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, being a part of this, and coming in, and like, do you imagine both of those? Like,
don't even joke around, Allison. Don't even joke around.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to go, you know what, this will add a little bit more to this city, and maybe people will stop saying it's the city that's fun for God.
And wouldn't it be great to actually see the stands full?
Yes.
Fuller?
Yes, I'm all for that. This has been a sweet way to end our lunch today. Thank you so much for joining us. Allison Fair, Blue Sky Strategy Group, Jennifer Madigan, of course, from Syntex Strategic. Thank you both. We're getting ready for the OBJ Business Lunch. Lots to talk about today. We're going to be heading to the Valley. I love heading to the Valley. We're going to be bringing you a story out of the OBJ today. We're also going to be speaking with Michael Anderson from Nobility Performance. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Summer days, summer nights. Lots of things to do, places to go, and people to see. If you're having a few drinks, be sure to plan ahead and get home safely. We don't want to pick you up. Drinking drivers risk injuries to themselves and others and take chances with their license, their jobs, and their future. Remember what's at stake and choose your ride, whether you're the driver, the passenger, or the party host. Thanks for supporting sober driving. I hope we never meet.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
Once upon a time, in a nursery rhyme, there were 3 bears. 1, 2, 3 bears. And they went a-walking in the cool woods a-talking while their porridge began.
Rogers TV invites you to let your imagination roam as we present Ottawa Storytellers. Each week we'll present a collection of original creative stories and inspirations for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It is Friday, March 31st. Good afternoon. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is cloudy, 2 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it is 3. And here's what's making news this hour. The federal government has given the final approval to the massive telco merger between Rogers and Shaw Communications. The $20 billion deal can now go ahead, but it comes with strict conditions and steep penalties, including Videotron lowering prices 20% below its competitors, and Rogers spending more than $6 billion to expand internet and 5G service throughout the country. If the companies fail to abide, they face legal penalties of $200 million for Videotron and $1 billion for Rogers. The deal, which is 2 years in the making, was originally blocked by the feds until Quebecers Videotron agreed to buy Shaw's Freedom Mobile as part of the deal, ensuring a 4th national wireless provider in the country. Ontario's minimum wage is set to rise to $16.55 an hour on October 1st, the 6.8% increase from the current rate. Labour Minister Monty McNaughton says the boost will go a long way towards helping people with the cost of living. The minimum wage for Ontario students will also increase on October 1st to $15.60 an hour for those under 18 who work 28 hours a week or less. And the Stormy Daniels scandal has officially landed Donald Trump in legal hot water. The former U.S. president has been indicted by a Manhattan grand jury. Exactly what the charges he faces remains unclear, but Trump is expected to surrender next Tuesday. The investigation centered on payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign to silence claims of an extramarital sexual encounter with the adult film actress. City News time is 12:32. I am Damilola Unime. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Business Lunch on City News, brought to you by the Ottawa Business Journal.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, it is the Ottawa Business Journal Business Lunch here on City News. We appreciate it very much that you're joining us, and we've really enjoyed working with Damilola, and today is Damilola's last day, and we want to wish her all the best on her new adventures. She will definitely be missed. We appreciate everything she's done for us. We wanted to head to the Valley and speak with MJ Levesque, Bumpy Roads Studio. Hi, MJ.
Hello there.
Well, you're in one of my favorite parts of the country, in Renfrew. How did you find yourself in Renfrew, MJ?
Oh, that's a long story, but we moved here from Toronto a few years ago because my husband was offered a position at the nuclear research facility here in Chalk River.
Oh, that's very exciting. And so I'm from Deep River, so I'm a Valley girl.
Okay.
So thank you so much for sharing that. Walk me through Bumpy Roads Studio. First of all, why name it Bumpy Roads?
Oh, making pottery is fraught with pitfalls. And, things can go sideways at so many steps in the process. It really is a reference to the process of making pots that is often difficult, and it is definitely a bumpy road. It's also a reference to the way I arrived at launching a pottery studio, because I never thought, if you told me when I was a university student, that I would end up running a pottery workshops, a studio, I would not have believed you, because I went to school to become a librarian, and I have an MBA, and launching such a business was not in the cards.
Really,
it just happened.
and you do beautiful work. I saw some of the pieces that you've made. Talk to me a little bit about the process. I mean, everything being handmade, is quite a process. Is there anything you're sort of working towards that maybe can help you in that?
Most definitely. I'm actively working on introducing some mechanization in the making process for various reasons. One definitely is standardizing pieces. I really want to launch a line of dinnerware that is, where each piece is exactly the same. They can stack perfectly. There's no awkward pressure points to avoid chipping, and also for scaling the business as well, so that I can onboard team members and help me with the actual production.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so MJ, do you have a store? Like, are we walking into Bumpy Roads Studio, or are you selling in other places?
So I do have a storefront in downtown Pembroke on Lake Street, and I do sell online. So I have a Shopify website where people can browse my work and make purchases. We ship across Canada on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And when did this all start? Was this a pandemic sort of turn, if you will?
Yes, it definitely was a pandemic shift.
For sure.
Yes.
Really interesting. And give us a sense, if someone's going to visit you at the store, what are they going to find?
So they're going to find my production for sure. In the store, I also have partnerships with local artisans, woodwork, textile, glasswork. So their work is on display here and available for sale. It's a consignment model. Yeah.
And MJ, when you think about, I think about gift giving. Like, I love giving things that are really unique. Do you have people that are coming in to maybe get something? I think about Mother's Day coming up, or, is that the kind of gift that would be welcome as well?
Yes, there is a lot that is available here, whether it's pottery, again, or textile or wood products. I have some beautiful artwork and items made from fused glass by all by local artisans. So there's lots and lots of choice. It depends what the person that will receive the gift is interested by, and I have something for just about every need, I think.
Well, I hope it's smooth roads ahead for Bumpy Road Studio. MJ Levesque, thanks so much for sharing your passion today.
Thank you for calling.
It's my pleasure. Michael Anderson is joining us to talk about how he does it really impacts this community. And Michael joins us now from Nobility Performance. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Sam, how you doing?
Great. So I learned about your business from a friend, and I'm really, really fascinated. What is Nobility Performance for those that haven't heard?
So we are a health clinic based in the west end of Ottawa, Stittsville, Ontario, on 120 Arbor Road. And we have a full-service clinic for all your essential healthcare needs. So we have a nutritionist on staff, we have chiropractors on staff that specialize in sport injury, day-to-day injury, as well as stenosis and disc and back injuries. We also have a cold water immersion tub, which is a 3 degrees Celsius plunge. We also have the first of its kind in Canada, but it's a full body photobiomodulation or red light therapy light pod. And included in that, we also offer massage therapy and compression therapy. So it's a real full service health clinic.
For sure. And I'm looking at all of the different, services that you offer. You've mentioned a few there. I'm looking at who you serve, and I see athletes, military, active or recovering individuals, anyone looking for body composition, optimization, and striving to be the best version of themselves. So this is everybody, right, Mike?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not exclusive to just athletes. We've been fortunate to work with a lot of professional athletes, a lot of professional men and women over the years, whether it be athletics or first responders, etc. So, but we certainly have a full range of clientele.
And tell us how, if somebody says, hey, I want to try the cold immersion or I want to try the light therapy, is it just a matter of calling you up and booking a time? Is that how it works?
Absolutely. They can call us or they can book us actually online. We have a great online system, online presence, either through our social media, which is at nobility_performance, or our website, nobilityperformance.com. Those are usually what I find people tend to contact us through, but certainly they can call us at any time, and we can certainly arrange for them to come in and try some of these services that are unique to the community of Ottawa.
Well, that's wonderful, and I know you do some amazing stuff in the community, Michael, and really, really appreciate you sharing about the business today. Thank you so much for joining us on City News.
Thanks so much, Sam. Appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too. We always discover some great businesses here on the OBJ Business Lunch. Such a wonderful opportunity to highlight business owners. And some days you hear, about small businesses, such as, a pottery store in the Valley. And sometimes you hear from, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company and everything in between. So we really do try to talk about all things business, and we really value that relationship with the Ottawa Business Journal. It has been a very busy news week. There is no two ways about it. The news team is obviously working hard to bring you all of that news. We know there's some very sad news out of Akwesasne today. The bodies of 6 individuals have been found right at the U.S. border there. We know from what we're hearing from authorities that one is identified as a child. Very hard to hear. It's very difficult to hear about some of these immigration issues, and we're not going to solve it overnight. But I'm really hoping that something is done to help people trying to flee their countries. We wanted to thank you so much for spending time with us this week. We're going to actually play an interview we played a little bit earlier in the week. It's a great interview. It's all about business. I'm going to hit the road because I'm on my way to the Rogers TV station, which is on Richmond Road. and I'm filling in for Derek Fage on daytime. But you'll want to lock it in. Stay right here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
That's the way I kill my skill sharpen, because I've been here sharpening.
What's going on, y'all? It's Jay Morris, a.k.a. your favorite light skin, and you're going to check out my performance on Encore Ottawa 3 coming up this week. Let's go.
All again, murderation, 911, call it in. Me, I murder
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
On Friday's Daytime Ottawa, we'll introduce you to the chef of the East India Company. They're actually going to be sharing one of their famous recipes for one of their sauces, so you're going to want to tune in for that and be sure to take some notes. Also on the show, we'll share a fabulous artist. Oh my goodness, he's a stone carver, and he works with stones that are about 3 feet high and 60 pounds. All that and more on Friday's Daytime Ottawa, right here on Rogers TV.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888-TAXI-GUY or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit arrivealive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
Here we go.
Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV. Here comes the 67. They score! How's that for your first of the season?
Another highlight reel goal. Perfect placement there on the one-time. What a play! Steps one, scores!
He is making a statement, isn't he?
Oh, that's a beauty of a shot from the freshman.
The OHL playoffs.
What a goal!
On Rogers TV.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, it is the OBJ Business Lunch. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We love going to all things business during this half hour and talk about those businesses that make this city and this region thrive. And we wanted to spend some time today with Scott Goodwin and Luke Vincent, owners of Bubba and Bugs Coffee Bar. Hello, you two.
Howdy. Hello.
Hi, it's great to have you here. I love the name of this coffee bar. Scott, tell us how Bugs and Bar or Bubba and Bugs got the name.
It was under a different name, and we took ownership just under 3 years ago. About 6 months in, we decided it was time to make it our own. Bubba and Bugs are just our nicknames for each other, and we'd love to say there's a great story behind that, but we've no idea. It just started. It is what it is, and we thought appropriate to slap it on the window. And,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And Luke, how did it all start? How did Bubba and Bugs begin, and what were you hoping to achieve?
Well, the idea was to, at one point, leave. We were in Toronto for many years, leave Toronto, and then look to build something outside. We were looking at Eastern Ontario, and it just so happened that this business came for sale
and it was in the hometown of where Scott was actually born and lived, which is Kentville. And so we went, well, let's uproot that. It was sooner than anticipated, and we weren't too sure what we were getting into. And that we knew we worked together there and enjoyed that whole process. And also making sure that because of having a lot of Kentville being Pride being involved, we thought it was a great place to step through.
We're having a couple of technical problems, and I want to hear everything you both have to say. So my producers are just going to put you on hold and make sure we have Scott and Luke very clear for everyone to hear here on City News. This is a great new, I believe it's a new business, only a couple years old, Bubba and Bug's Coffee Bar in the Kemptville area. And they're definitely doing things differently. We wanted to talk to them about all of that, so we're going to get them on the line. We're also going to speak a little bit later in the show to Natalie Lloyd, who we spend time with here on City News. She's a general administrator for the Wabano Centre for Aboriginal Health. We're going to talk to Natalie. We're also going to speak with Matt Connell from the Arts Hub. We get some of these great ideas from the Ottawa Business Journal, and we're so grateful to be able to have that as a resource. We have Luke and Scott back with us. Scott, tell us what's different about Bubba and Bug's Coffee Bar that maybe is different from your average coffee bar.
Sure. Sorry, Luke has just stepped away for a sec. So it's Scott. I think, honestly, and it sounds a little hammy, but we put our hearts into this place 110%. So we aren't fully staffed. My mom is actually in here helping us 4 days a week. We have nieces that help us on Saturday afternoon and Saturday mornings. Everything about this place is driven by heart and good intention. So we're very passionate about it, but we're really, really passionate about the relationships we have with the people that come in. We really don't like to use the word customers. It feels a little too transactional. It's friends. It's a family, and I think that people coming in here feel that energy when they come. At least I hope they do.
And you've really taken Pride to a new level as well. And talk to me a little bit how you've made this an inclusive and welcoming environment.
Yeah, coming back from Toronto, we made a deal with each other, Luke and I, that we were not going to go back into the closet, not 1 foot backward, simply because it may not be as progressive here as it may be in a larger city center. That said, there is an established Pride committee here. There are people who have set up camp and are making good things happen. We're an extension of that. So though we do stand alone in a lot of ways, we sort of have our own big agenda. What we strive to do in here is make sure it's a safe space for everyone, and by doing that, we just we're as public about our sexuality within reason. I mean, we're more than that. We're a functioning business, right? It's not all about that, but we don't hide who we are. So we want people to know that when you come in here, you're in the company of people who understand possibly what you're going through, what you've gone through. We maybe have that shared experience, and we want you to sort of feel that when you come in here. We've tried to initiate a few different events in the shop. We've had drag brunches around Pride time. We try and do some kind of in-house events. We had a pink market, we called it. We had gay artisans coming in, queer artisans, coming into the space to set up booths for the day last year. And probably the thing we're most proud of outside of the day-to-day business is we held our first queer prom here in the space last June. And that was for ages 16 and up. And it was designed to provide the prom experience for those who did not have it, were not able to be out, were not able to attend prom with their chosen partner back when it was their time, and for those who still maybe don't feel comfortable attending their high school prom with their chosen partner. Now, we've come a long way, but there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of judgment. There's still, unfortunately, a lot of hate. So running that event was very personal to us and hugely important, and it was probably, I think, for both of us, and I wish Luke was back right now, sorry, I think it's a night that we'll remember for the rest of our lives, and we're very excited to be hosting again this June. We'll actually be holding it June 10th, and we're just pulling details together for that now.
Oh, honestly, that's beautiful. I mean, that is, we've heard some really tragic tales of people that couldn't go to their prom, feel comfortable there. That's beautiful. It just sounds, Luke, are you back?
He's serving someone.
Okay, no problem. No problem, Scott. I'll ask you then. So let me just say this to you. It feels, and you can, correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like your lifestyle and your, the way you wanted to live has beautifully intersected with this business. And I would say, Scott, to be honest with you, many people go through their whole lives and they don't get that beautiful intersection. Is that the sweet spot, if you will?
It's funny. Life is funny, right? The timing of the opportunity, everything about it. And Luke and I have said 1,000 times, and I'll try really hard to not get choked up here, but we wouldn't have done this with anyone else but each other. So coming here kind of arm in arm and remaining who we are and being blessed with the people that do come in here and who have encouraged us and allowed us to use it as a canvas is exactly that. We've been able to intertwine who we are as people with our business, and I think you're right. I don't think a lot of people are afforded that. It's a business, and it takes a huge amount of work, and that's our primary focus day to day. But the ability to do things like hold a queer prom in this space, like if you had told, I'm sure, either 16-year-old Luke or I that one day we'd be in a position to do that, there's no way we'd have believed you. So yeah, they are linked. Who we are as people. Experience and this business are coexisting you're right, and then that was a really nice way to put it. Thank you, in a really beautiful way. Luke is back now. I don't know if he wants to add to that. Okay.
Well, let me ask Luke then. If you're back, Luke, if I'm heading to your business and seeing spending some time out in Kemptville at Bubba and Bugs, what would you suggest? What's the most popular order?
Yeah, I think our baking is where it's at. It's personal. It's in-house. It's from us, done in here, and it's the main thing. I think that's what people come for. It's with the coffee, baking, and we of course sandwiches that we offer as well. They're very popular, but it's a bit of everything. But also the ambiance. I think it's people come for us as well. It's what we have to offer.
Mm-hmm. I think it's soul food in a lot of ways. Maybe not traditional soul food, but my mom helps us up with the baking too. She's Maggie's Shortbread is a local phenomenon, and the three of us kind of put our hearts into it every day, and what you got on the counter might not be, but it's good for the soul, and it's definitely something that I think Luke's right that we're known for.
Absolutely. So Scott, tell me about your mom.
My mom. She honestly, without her, when we first came, Luke was still working for the government. And so his availability was strained sometimes. Now, I guess one of the silver linings to having started up during COVID was that we weren't seeing the same level of traffic, so managing that made it better. But what made it possible was the presence of family here. Having my mom here, family here, a support base to step in when we needed it, when we needed a pinch hitter, was crucial to us getting through. Would we have made it anyway? Probably. Would we have done it gracefully? Probably not. And she continues to chip in all the time. We're very lucky to have friends and family here who have been a lifeline anytime we needed one.
Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen, for spending time with us today. And I'll be making my way out to Kemptville. Don't you worry.
I did.
I look forward to it.
Give it a couple of weeks. It's not at its cutest right now.
Okay.
We're going through it. Everybody's going through it. The weather is what it is. This place in the summer is something. We got a great trail system. Some really cute little local businesses down here. We're all pitching in, doing what we can. It's a bit of a mixed bag, and we're making it work. And it's a great place to come and spend a day. And we'd love to have you.
Congratulations, you two. Scott Goodwin joining us, and Luke Vincent, owners of Bubba and Bugs Coffee Bar, and they've got Scott's mom helping and lots of family. That's awesome. That's what business is all about sometimes. We appreciate the OBJ. We got that great story from the Ottawa Business Journal. I hope you're checking them out every single day. I hope you're an insider as well. I'm an insider, so I get that insider scoop. It's a little bit of a fee for the year, but certainly worth every single dollar. When we come back, we've got lots to talk about. Stay with us on the